I'd like to call the meeting for the Village Board for the Village of Ashwaubenon to order for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Roll call, please.
President Kardasky,
Here.
Trustee Service,
Here.
Trustee Paul,
Here.
Trustee Zerbal is excused, Trustee Atkinson,
Here.
Trustee Krieger,
Here.
and Trustee Flukie.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge. And please remember our men and women in uniform throughout the world. I need a motion on the agenda. I have no changes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Under discussion, quick, could
Okay.
we move 10L up, maybe after 10D, please?
10L. After 10D,
Yes, that'd be great, unless there's something else that there's a lot of people here that need to go before, but looking at the agenda, it seemed like a lot of the ones beyond aren't one as many people at it.
okay. I have no problems with that. Does anybody want to recommend approval with that change?
I'll recommend approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend the change on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. Motion carried. 5, action on the minutes from the open and closed session from January 7th and January 28th, 2025 Village Board meetings.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. Motion carried. Number 6, comments from the public. You must be limited to items not on the agenda. Must state your name and address for the record. You're limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody who would like to speak on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, could you please state your name and address for the record and have a seat?
Sure. My name is Pastor Josh Fight. I live at 1502 West Paulson Road in the lovely village of Ashwaubenon. Last time that I was here for a board meeting was in January of 2019, acting on behalf of St. John Lutheran Church, the congregation that I am so blessed to serve. As the village board presented our congregation the Community Excellence Award for 2018. Largely due to our relationship with the village as a polling place and the work that we do as the only emergency food pantry in the village. And that was a nice bit of recognition, not just for those two things that we did, but also because from its chartering over 150 years ago, St. John Lutheran Church has been an important part of this village. We have loved being a partner with so many different community organizations, and again, with the village proper as a polling place for at least the last 10 years. It predates my tenure as pastor there. But I'm here tonight to talk about something that happened beginning on Election Day, November 5th, 2024. As I was headed to a colleague meeting at about 1 p.m., village attorney Patrick Legal called to inform me that someone had complained that while we were a polling place, they complained about our digital marquee sign, that it was inappropriately political. The image at issue was that we had a rainbow with a white heart and the word love in red letters upon it. We do not fly a pride flag from a flagpole or anything. It was a digital image of a rainbow with a white heart and the word love. In our conversation, I tried to express to the village attorney that we do not do that as a political matter. It is an outward expression of our mission, sharing the bread of life. And what that means is that St. John seeks out opportunities to share the relentless, undying love and grace of Jesus with anyone and everyone who may pass by our facility. The congregation has displayed that image every day, including on other election days, since at least 2022. During our conversation, I was pretty clear that I didn't want to turn off the sign. because I, again, don't believe that it had any political intent whatsoever. In the end, I did turn off the sign. I did tell Mr. Legal that I would turn off the sign, and when I returned from my meeting, I removed that graphic from the slides that were on there. Exactly 1 week later, I received a phone call from Village Clerk Chris Teskey telling me that St. John would no longer be a polling place. She didn't explicitly say so, but I believe to this day that it is directly tied to the digital sign and the message of welcome and affirmation that we show on it. So I want to take just a moment to talk about politics. St. John is not partisan, but as the God in whom I place my trust and give my worship was executed by a tyrannical state, I must come to terms with the fact that Jesus' message was in his lifetime and remains to this day in the work of his church political. In a country where our elected leaders are even today considering a budget that will take away health care from over 70 million people, in a country where the leading cause of death of children is guns, in a country where constitutional protection of equal protection under the law and due process are being denied to citizens simply because their bodies and their understanding of their self does not match the ink of a check mark on their birth certificate, in a country that incarcerates more people per capita than any other nation in the world, and where people of color are disproportionately imprisoned compared to the national demographics, in a country that refuses to ensure that children and their families go hungry and that the veterans who have served in our armed forces have the mental health care and homes, in a country like that, I believe that the Church of Jesus Christ must be a political organization, and baptized Christians who bear the cross of our Savior on our foreheads must be political agents, always speaking out and acting on behalf of the poor, the sick, the marginalized, the overlooked, and all victims of abuse and injustice. We don't do that in any partisan way. You can watch my congregation's worship services recorded on YouTube, and I never mention any candidate or political party. But again, we will be political. Again, I don't think that the sign is. And to that end, we like being politically active and engaged with the village. So the door remains open. It is a partnership that we have valued in the past, and we would like to continue doing that. As a resident of the village, I hope that we will actually be voting again at St. John because the current situation is untenable. Moving 2 more precincts to the community center it worked last week when voter turnout was low, but during general elections, our parking lot and building are often full to capacity, and that's not going to be able to work at the community center. So our door is open, but I want you to hear very clearly the words of one of my parishioners. We will not darken 1 pixel of our rainbow. Not one. It is not an unwillingness to work together. It is not out of politics, but as testimony to our commitment to the good news of Jesus Christ. That sign is just one of the many ways that we let everyone in our community, regardless of their politics and regardless of their political affiliation, know that all are welcome and all means all.
Thank you.
Glenn Thede, 3725 Woods Edge Way, resident in Ashwaubenon. I just want to follow up a little bit on what Josh has said. Our church is open to all. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation, it doesn't matter what your race, it does not matter what your sexual orientation is. And after being a polling place for 10 years, we knew about, I'll say, a week or 2 before, we should not have any cookies out during the voting because of what that might send. We didn't do that, okay? If you lay out the rules, I'm sure that Josh and the parishioners would follow them. But I think this is a big misunderstanding. And after being, we're an outreach to the community. And after being a polling place for 10 years, to have the village clerk call and say, we're no longer going to be considered a polling place, I just view it as an outreach, as an insult, quite frankly, for what we're trying to do. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak on any items not on tonight's agenda? Anybody like to speak on items not on tonight's agenda? we'll move on then. Thank you. Written communications and/or announcements. 7A, we have a proclamation tonight for our Community Excellence Award recipient, who is Christina Lindauer, our State Farm Agent in Ashwaubenon. Come on over, Christina. Congratulations. This is a proclamation honoring Christina Lindauer, State Farm Insurance, 2024 Community Excellence Award. Whereas the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Ashwaubenon wishes to annually honor an organization or person who makes extraordinary efforts to improve our community. And whereas Christina Lindauer of State Farm Insurance is a small independent business owner located at 2337 South Ridge Road in the Village of Ashwaubenon. And whereas Christina Lindauer started with State Farm Insurance 17 years ago and has had her own Ashwaubenon location for the past 3 years. And whereas Christina Lindauer is an active member of the Ashwaubenon Business Association. And whereas Christina Lindauer is very active in all community events, including financially sponsoring the Ashwaubenon Food Truck Rallies and Ashwaubenon Swim Club meets, and whereas Christina Lindauer volunteers her time and talent serving as a Girl Scout troop leader at the Valley View Elementary School and on a fundraising committee for a local teacher. Now, therefore, be it resolved with the deepest of appreciation of these efforts in community outreach, the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Ashwaubenon does hereby recognize and award Christina Lindauer of State Farm Insurance the 2024 Community Excellence Award. Thank you. And I will let you talk.
Thank you. When Mary called me, I was very unexpected. I just want to thank everybody in the Village of Ashwaubenon. When I opened my office, everyone was so nice. Called Rex and had crazy ideas about being part of the food truck rally. It's been really great meeting everyone, business leaders, community leaders, residents. Everyone's just been so welcoming. So I really do thank you for that. And I want to thank my family because I am a part of a lot of things and they come along for all of that. So I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. Stop on by my office. But I really do appreciate this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's always the fun part of our jobs. For 7B, it's a presentation on the NFL draft. However, before we start that, I wanted to make a comment. Our GIS professional here in the Village of Ashwaubenon has created some apps. So we're trying to, Public Works Director Brian Rickard has been trying to figure out ways that we can lower some of our costs, be a little more efficient. There's some inefficiencies with all the things that we do in Public Works, and we want to continue to always offer these different services. So Francine has created these apps on our website. So if you go to there's two ways to get there, www.ashwaubenon.gov, go under Residents, click Large Item Collection. There's a huge red button on that website, and you can click that and fill out a form when you have large items to be picked up. And they'll come that first week, or the third week, and they'll get it picked up. We were doing a very inefficient way of trying to figure out where everything was in the village, and this way you can register your large item. And then with the brush pickup, do the same thing. go to www.ashwaubenon.gov, hit resident, click brush collection, big red button again, and it'll fill the form out. You fill the form out, and they'll come and get it. The other way you can do it is do ashwaubenon.gov/brush. It'll bring you right to the form, and you'll be able to fill out the form. So for anybody out there listening, this is going to be a new way to do it, but it's going to be a much, much more efficient way to do it. So I hope everybody gets that. If not, give me a call, and we'll walk you through it. Okay, now, Joel.
All right, well, I trust everyone is here to get this riveting presentation on the NFL draft. And if anyone was planning on attending our upcoming public information meeting on Thursday, March 6th, you can skip that event because you're pretty much going to get the same information tonight. So congratulations on that double win. Real quickly, just to kind of give you an update on the planning efforts for the NFL draft. If you've been watching the news lately, you would have noticed that the Green Bay Packers and the NFL had published recently some renderings of the overall draft campus. Those have been kind of wildly popular amongst the fans of the NFL and the draft and the Packers, and have been circulating online quite a bit. For those of you that maybe have heard of the draft but aren't quite exactly sure what this all entails, this presentation will kind of walk through some of those key details, as well as some key things that residents need to know in order to be prepared before the event comes in April. So again, as I mentioned, the NFL draft is coming this April. It is 3 days. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, April 24th, 25th, and 26th. When the overall bid was put in by the Packers and Discover Green Bay and the overall local community, they had estimated at that time that the overall draft would provide an economic impact to the state of Wisconsin to the tune of about $94 million. That's about 6 times the overall value of one Packer home game. And that's reasonable given the fact that it's a 3-day event for a much longer period of time. With that being said, last year the draft was held in Detroit, and they welcomed over 750,000 fans with an overall statewide economic impact of over $213 million. Again, our number was really conservative at bid, and maybe we'll do much better than the $94 million, and it's a kind of a wait-or-see approach at this time. Again, this is the overall campus that was kind of provided to the media this past week. As I mentioned, this is a 3-day event. Thursday is the highest attended day. That is when the first round of picks are made. So those are the top picks for each team. Friday features rounds 2 and 3. And then Saturday rounds out the draft where they pick rounds 4 through 7. As I mentioned, again, Thursday is generally the highest attended day. Again, weather dependent, of course. Most people want to come and see and get excited for that blue chip pick for their team. The other highest attended day is Saturday, primarily because it allows families to attend the draft and experience the event on a weekend. The overall campus that we'll kind of show here through these renderings is broken into 2 parts. There is what's called the draft theater, and that's what you traditionally see on TV if you were to watch the draft on television. And the other part of the draft, and really the bigger part of it, is the NFL experience. And that's where the fan interaction and engagement happens. And again, I'll kind of show that. But the overall area of the camp for the experience is about 800,000 square feet, as opposed to the draft theater, which is only about 250,000 square feet. So again, the experience is the much bigger area where more interaction happens. The draft for general admission is free of charge. There are no tickets that are required. The NFL just asks that you register on the NFL One Pass app, which we'll talk about later. But even though you register on the One Pass app, that does not indicate that you will be given admission into the campus. It is on a first come, first served basis, and there is the possibility that capacity is reached within the campus itself. In fact, we experienced that on Thursday when we visited the draft in Detroit last year. There is high security requirements. Consider it very similar to a Packer game day. There are clear bag requirements, certain things that you can bring into the campus, and certain things that you certainly cannot. Oftentimes we get questioned, can I bring in a chair? Because it looks like there's a lot of standing. No, unfortunately not, unless you have some type of ADA request through the NFL in which you've been given permission. Chairs, folding chairs, lawn chairs, things of that nature are not permitted inside the campus. This rendering shows kind of the overall stage and kind of from the fan experience from the theater. This particular structure is big. I always liken to reference it as about half the size of the Resch Center, so it is a huge structure. It is temporary, and it does take about 4 weeks to build, and as a result of that, there will be traffic impacts as it relates to that overall build, and then the 2-week removal process to tear the stage down, which we'll talk about in a moment. The theater area has areas called Very Important Persons or VIP areas. There are tickets available to purchase for that area. And then there are also areas in which the NFL franchises are given passes to give out to their rabid fans, if you will. To note, the NFL draft is really, certainly the NFL experience is for fan engagement, but the draft theater is really set up to be a television production. So many of the fans are really extras in a TV production, and the NFL clearly wants the fans that are the most excited to be present on cameras to make it look better on TV. And of course, there's a large general admission area. Within the theater area, you'll see national television media areas within that. So think about ESPN, College Game Day, the NFL Network. All of the major football or sports production media companies will have some type of production studio inside the theater area as they're broadcasting throughout the 3 days of the draft. In addition to the theater area, you'll have prospect rooms, green rooms, and other back-of-stage production areas. So there is a large footprint that the theater takes up, but much of that is in that support arena for the actual television production. Again, this is that overall theater area. And this is what the VIP area would look like. So this would be underneath the canopy of the overall theater area. Again, you can see that there's kind of seating areas within the center. Those, I would presume, would be kind of those areas designated for the teams to give out tickets to. The other seating to the right or left of the stage would likely be for those other ticketed guests within that theater area as well. And now I'll just talk briefly about the campus. As I mentioned, the NFL experience is going to take place predominantly in the west end of kind of the Lambeau Titletown property area. So most of the Titletown will encompass the NFL experience. The west side of Lambeau Field, portions of Lambeau Field itself, will all be encompassed within that NFL experience zone. The overall NFL theater, however, where that fan engagement or where the viewing is for the picks, are going to be on the east side of the stadium, where the stage is going to be located immediately adjacent to the Resch Expo. From an entrance standpoint, there will be a couple different entrances into the overall campus. And this is by design for security purposes. So as I mentioned, general admission is free with registration. Those two entry points will be on the west end of the campus, the first one being on the northwest corner of Titletown. So if you picture where the football field is in Titletown and where they're constructing that new Packer Athletic Club, that new office building there, it's going to be adjacent to that. The second entrance is going to be in the southwest corner of the Lambeau Field lot, just off of Ridge Road. There will be two other admission areas for VIP members or ticketed guests. One will be in the Titletown area, and the other one will be on the far east end of the campus near the Resch Center. But again, you need to be an invited guest or a ticketed member to use those entrances. The entrances are limited intentionally to maintain capacity limitations and for other security protocols. There are other exits throughout the campus. So if you happen to enter in through the Titletown gate, and you go to the theater area and you decide you want to leave the theater area and let's say go to the bar district on Holmgren Way, there will be exits within the theater area to get there efficiently. However, if you decide you want to come back into the campus, you'll have to make your way all the way back to either of these two general admission entrances. Just to kind of talk about pre- and post-draft travel impacts, this was recently reported in some media outlets. As I mentioned, that overall stage construction is going to require a 4-week build-out and then up to a 2-week teardown. And because that stage is being built on the northern half of the Village of Ashwaubenon section of Oneida Street, that section of Oneida Street will be closed starting approximately March 28th, and it will remain closed until about up to 2 weeks after the draft, so roughly kind of that May 10th window. If tear down goes quickly and weather is cooperative, obviously the road could be open sooner than that, but that is kind of what the NFL is establishing for their timeline. In addition to that section, the section of Armed Forces Drive immediately in front of the Resch Center and Expo, that will also be closed. So just a quick note on that. So that's going to start at the end of March. The draft isn't until April 24th, and there will be events and activities that take place at the Resch Center or the Resch Expo all the way up until April 12th. So if you are planning on going to the Papa Roach concert, which I think this crowd looks like the type that would go to Papa Roach on April 12th, you may need to find alternative methods to get to the concert at the Resch Expo on that night. The next sequence of closures is going to be the eastbound lanes of Lombardi Avenue. So that will happen a couple to 3 weeks after the initial closing. Those dates are certainly subject to change. In fact, they change on the daily as far as what that exact date will be, but just plan for sometime in mid-April, a couple to 3 weeks before the draft. Eastbound Lombardi will be closed, and that will also include a section of South Ridge Road from Lombardi to just short of the Lodge Kohler property. After that, anywhere between 5 to up to 12 days after the Lombardi Avenue eastbound closure, then you will begin to see the closure of westbound traffic on Lombardi Avenue, and that would ultimately cut off access from Oneida Street if you're coming from the city of Green Bay, or South Ridge if you're coming again from the city of Green Bay. Those sections of Ridge and Oneida will be closed, and the westbound travel on Lombardi Avenue will be closed as well. Again, that'll be a couple weeks, a week to 2 weeks before the draft. Those roads are predominantly being closed for the overall campus buildup. And so it's necessary for the NFL to be able to close those roads for a couple weeks in order to allow for the secure perimeter to be constructed for the overall campus. And then finally, the days leading up to the draft itself, so pretty much that Tuesday or Wednesday before the draft, the days of the draft, and maybe the day after, you'll start to see some additional closures. Those are the areas marked in orange. So think about the remaining portion of Lombardi Avenue on the west end to about Marley or Military Avenue, or up to, I think it's 14th Street in the city of Green Bay on Holmgren. That will be closed, or on Lombardi, excuse me. And then the section of Holmgren from Lombardi to Mike McCarthy, the section of Mike McCarthy from Holmgren to Oneida. And then there'll be some softer closures, if you will, on longer portions of Oneida Street, primarily from Borvan to the full closure just south of the stadium, as well as South Ridge from essentially Lodge Kohler to Valley View Road. Now, what I mean by limited closures or soft closures is that they may have one-way traffic on those roads, but it wouldn't necessarily be full two-way traffic on those sections of roadway. Some of the side streets, like the remainder of Armed Forces Drive, Brett Favre Pass, Tony Cannondale Run, those will also be a part of that kind of closure area for those days of the draft. And again, why is that? And that's predominantly to build the overall campus. If you've seen any of our previous presentations, we've talked about our experience that we had in Detroit. And based on that experience, we understand what it takes to kind of put the overall campus together. As I mentioned, that stage is huge. It's a big structure. It is temporary. So it takes quite a bit of resources and time to construct the overall canopy. And as a result of that, that overall area becomes secured to allow contractors to build that footprint. Beyond that, you'll start to see the overall secure perimeter to be constructed. Think 8 foot tall panel fencing with fabric wrapped around them, other vehicle mitigation systems put into place, traffic control, things of that nature will start to get put into place days, if not weeks, before the draft around that overall campus. And these are images from Detroit that we had taken or had received from the press from our experience there. The other thing that you're going to likely see in the coming days and for sure the next few weeks leading up to the draft is the installation of additional infrastructure, wireless technology. So if you think about the number of fans that are going to be coming to this area and many individuals who rely on wireless technology from cell phones to video streaming and things like that, the various cellular technology companies such as Verizon, AT&T, Spectrum, T-Mobile, they are all looking to expand their infrastructure in order to support the influx of additional fans and users on their system. So we have been given a certain request and have given certain permits to extend fiber optic networking within the overall draft campus perimeter. So you will likely see contractors working in the area to install fiber networks so that they can connect their infrastructure to support the draft campus. In addition to that, there's a number of security cameras that are currently in place and installed around the Lambeau Field and Titletown campus, but there will be additional security protocols, cameras, and things of that nature that are installed. So you will likely see that type of infrastructure being put into place over the next few weeks as well. So these are two different images that we grabbed from Detroit, just showing some of the video camera technology that goes in, the additional cellular technology that gets put even on things like streetlight poles and things of that nature. And then the other thing I'll mention off of this, and it'll touch on another slide, is just you'll start to see signage and banners, much like what you see here in this picture on the left with NFL branded logos and things of that nature. And this is another example, this coming picture, of the different branding imagery and banners that the NFL will put into place that represents not only the city of Green Bay, the village of Ashwaubenon, but all the NFL franchises as well. And you'll see things as crazy as building high type billboards or banners that are within the draft campus themselves. So these are through their permitting process to do that. The other thing you'll see around the campus and part of the closure is there's a number of temporary structures that have to be built, so that requires a secure perimeter within the campus. This is an example of a television studio that was constructed. Again, another temporary building that's built and torn down at the end of the draft, and this is right in the NFL theater area. So expect this again, certainly in the draft that we're going to experience coming April. This is another temporary building. This is a television studio that has 3 individual broadcast stations televising from the lower, the middle, and the upper floor. So again, this went up and came down before and after the draft. So one of the questions we often get is where can I go and what do I need to avoid when the draft comes? So you have people that want to find a way to get to the draft, and we have people that want to find ways to get out of the area so they can avoid the draft. We're working on the final plans of our transportation management program that will feature directions of traffic flow, will feature detour routes both before, during, after, and post-draft. Those details will be coming out in the next few weeks, and we'll have that available. But in the interim, this is kind of the general area that we're saying is likely to be the most impacted by all of the activity that happens in the ingress and egress of draft fans coming to the overall stadium. So a couple quick notes to make is Lombardi Avenue is in large part going to be closed. So that will function very differently than on a typical game day. On game day, Lombardi Avenue is open for most hours leading up to the game. There are some closure times pre-game, post-game, but then by and large it opens up relatively quickly thereafter. In this case, that won't be the situation. So traffic is going to be encouraged and routed under different corridors other than Lombardi Avenue. So think of things like Ashland Avenue, Mason Street, things of that nature. And then that traffic is going to feed into the neighborhoods off of their various arterials and connecting streets. The exit at Lombardi Avenue at this time is planned to be opened. However, traffic is going to have different movement patterns upon leaving the exit. So just stay tuned to that. So I picked up areas off of Wood Lane or Shady. Those neighborhoods are also going to be impacted because traffic may be routed or directed into those areas of the village as a result of some of these closures. So again, stay tuned over the next couple, 3 weeks. That information will become much more detailed, and it will be presented through various mechanisms of communication. The first one I want to touch on is the NFL One Pass. There is an app, so if you go to Google Play or the Apple Store, you can download the NFL One Pass. This is the tool that you will need to register yourself if you are planning on attending the draft. And any of the information that is important and pertinent for anyone that's planning to attend will be housed here. There is kind of a landing page presently on the app, so you can certainly download it now and view the information as it is present. But over the next few weeks here, you're going to start to see information become much more populated, and the NFL will use this app to push notifications to individuals that have registered for the overall draft itself. The other element is the village's website. So Mary mentioned villageofashwaubenon.org, ashwaubenon.gov. So if you go to that URL, this is a snapshot of our homepage. There is a link in the lower left-hand corner under News and Updates that says 2025 NFL Draft. Within that page, there's specific information for residents, for businesses of Ashwaubenon, and also a link to Discover Green Bay's page for visitors that are planning to make their visit for the NFL Draft. Finally, within our site and Discover Green Bay, if you're a business owner, there is a business resource kit that is comprehensive that helps provide information and tool tips for businesses, not only in Ashwaubenon, but really throughout the state of Wisconsin. They talk about how you can leverage social media, marketing, some do's and don'ts, things of that nature. Again, go to Discover Green Bay's website at greenbay.com/draft25, and you can visually see and download that resource kit for your own use. I want to touch on a few quick local issues that I'm sure residents are concerned about. So parking for the draft is going to act and function very similar to game day with a few exceptions. So parking on lawns, yards, things of that nature, not only should be expected, it is in most cases being encouraged because they're gonna need parking. So this is a good opportunity for property owners to provide that parking. A couple quick notes on that, however, is this is unlike a game day in which people come and go throughout the day. So those that do park cars on game day, you will not want to park people in because they'll likely challenge those property owners on that issue when they want to move prior to the end of the overall draft event. Later in tonight's meeting, we're going to talk a little bit about on-street parking and what may be further restricted during the draft. So we are looking at some issues as it relates to traffic flow and pedestrian movement. So we want to make sure that we provide some additional no parking situations for on-street parking. So again, that will happen later at tonight's meeting. And then, as I mentioned, detailed information about parking and transit information will be posted once it's finalized in a couple weeks. Individuals that operate or are looking to operate a mobile food establishment, just a quick reminder that those are regulated under Ashwaubenon Municipal Code. A license is required by the village in addition to a state or county health department. So oftentimes food establishments think, well, if I have a license through the county health department, I'm good. That is one step of the licensing requirement. You do need to be licensed appropriately in the village and follow all rules and regulations that the village has established. We get a lot of inquiries about direct sellers, and those are individuals that are looking for soliciting and engaging in direct sales in and around a draft campus. And just like any other event, just like any other time throughout the year, direct sellers are regulated under municipal code. They are required to be issued a permit in order to sell or solicit in the village of Ashwaubenon. So it's important that you work directly with the village, specifically the clerk's office, to ensure that they have the appropriate license to directly sell. RV camping comes up. We hear the story that people are looking to rent spaces in their driveway or in their front yard for RVs to park and for individuals to camp. That is currently and will continue to be prohibited in the village of Ashwaubenon. So RV and trailer parking for camping purposes is not permitted. It will be strictly enforced. At the only time it is permitted is in a licensed campground, of which I don't believe the village has any. Short-term rentals, a couple quick things. So it's really critical for you and your guest safety and security that it's done properly. Depending on how you do it or how often you plan to rent your home will dictate the type of licensing that's required. Regardless if you're going to rent your home out for 1 night or 10 nights, you will be required to have a license through Brown County Health and a proper health inspection. So that's vitally important to know that you do need to have that licensing. Depending on the number of days you plan to rent your home out over the course of a 12-year calendar period or a licensing period will determine whether or not you need a specific license from the Village of Ashwaubenon. Regardless, there is a 6-step guide that we've put together with Discover Green Bay, the Green Bay Area Room Tax Commission, and the various adjoining municipalities. That is on greenbay.com/draft25. You can download that 6-step guide, and it'll walk you through the exact process that you need to follow for that draft. Coincidentally, I'm not sure where this picture was taken. I'm hoping it's in Green Bay because technically advertising in a short-term rental is not allowed in the Village of Ashwaubenon. So we'll find you, whoever you are. Real quickly, and the reason why I think recently there's been some media reports and some commentary online about, this is just big government trying to regulate and control what we can and can't do. Really, this comes down to the health and safety of the renters that are going to be utilizing that premise. If you recall, just this past year, there was a rental unit in central western Wisconsin where 6 people were killed. That individual rental unit did not have a legal permit, and as a result of that, didn't have the appropriate inspection done to ensure that they had complied with the requirements for that lodging. So we want to make sure that from a health and safety standpoint that those homes are ready to inhabit people for those types of purposes. Real briefly, we get these questions too, signs and marketing. So there's a lot of blitz or kind of target marketing that is being requested. And simply put, our sign code basically regulates where signs can be placed, erected, established, painted, so on and so forth. So regardless of whether it's a draft or not, the signs still need to be compliant with municipal code. On-premise signage is regulated by the zoning district. Off-premise signage, which in most cases the request that we're receiving is for off-premise signage, is prohibited, with very few exceptions. And then finally, just a few odds and ends. As I mentioned, our transportation plan is being finalized currently in the next 3 weeks. We hope to have that information available for the public. There's a couple things that will be incorporated into that transportation plan. One will be detours for both pre-draft and post-draft, meaning like the days before the draft, the days after the draft has been completed, as well as wayfinding components during that time for businesses that may be impacted as a result of those detours. In addition to that, there will be some traffic plans for egress and ingress for not only just general motorists attending the draft, but things like bicyclists, shuttle buses, van rides, things of that nature. And so there'll be detailed information about shuttles and share rides and ride share systems as well. The NFL, the local organizing committee, they are looking for quite a few volunteers. So if you're interested in either volunteering or working at the draft, there are opportunities to get employed. They are looking for people to do things as simple as just being a community liaison and helping people and helping direct people to where they need to go, when they're lost. So go to greenbay.com, draft 2025. There's a sign-in form there that you can fill out if you're interested to support that. There'll be additional information on promotion and marketing of the overall draft. The community, if you have a business, this is a great opportunity for you to begin promoting that. And then the village is undertaking a number of beautification and wayfinding efforts throughout the community in preparation of the draft, such things like invasive species control, weed management, litter and trash pickup, things of that nature. So as I mentioned, this is the presentation that we're planning to present at Tuesday, March 6th. Mary is kind of going to host and MC that meeting, and then I will be giving the primary presentation. Here's our general contact information. If there are any questions, certainly at that meeting, you can certainly ask them. It's up to the board tonight as to whether you would want to entertain questions on this topic tonight. But I'll leave it at that in case the board has any questions for me. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Joel on this item? Like he said, we will be presenting this at our PAC on March 6th, Thursday night. We expect a full house. So, any questions? Okay, thank you, Joel. One thing I also forgot to do here, under written communications or announcements, I would like to welcome Tony Walkowitz back to the Village of Ashwaubenon. It's been great having him here for the last week, so it's wonderful. Okay, any other questions on anything? Okay. Number 8, action on consent agenda. 8A, consider, discuss, act on a temporary alcohol license premise extension for Village Liquor and Wine. Consider, discuss, act on a change of agent Quick Trip Inc., DBA Quick Trip number 114-Addison Huckey. C, consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer, Class C wine license for the Tattered Whisk LLC, DBA The Green Bay Cookie Company. D, consider, discuss, act on bid award for Babcock standpipe removal. Consider, discuss, act on bid award for Babcock monopole construction. Consider, discuss, act on resolution number R2-2-25, resolution approving the Village of Ashwaubenon water utility to create an effective date for the purchased water adjustment clause. Consider, discuss, act on the budgeted expenditures for periods between 12/17/2024 to 1/17/2025 and 1/18/2025 to 2/18/2025. Receive and accept December 2024 and January 2025 investment reports. I, receive and accept January 2025 financial reports. J, receive and accept February 2025 Public Works Department report. K, receive and accept February 2025 Park, Rec, and Forestry Department reports. Before we go on and I ask for an approval, I would like 8A taken out of the consent agenda for discussion.
I'll move to approve everything except A.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, excuse me, except 8A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Excuse me. Motion carried. Coughing. The reason why I wanted this pulled is because I was concerned about the length of time. Thank you, Tracy. I was concerned about the length of time for that March 1st to June 1st.
I was wondering the same thing, Mary, why it was so extended with the time and with Joel just going through the draft, you know, kind of when things will start coming together. That was my question as well.
And I talked with another person from who owns a liquor store. And a lot of the deals that are coming through for the purchasing of items, a lot of the distributors are taking any of the deals off come March 1. So they have to have it ordered by March 1. So I understand that. But I was concerned at Public Works about the trailer in the back. I found out that the trailer is not refrigerated, so we don't have to worry about that. But my concern with that trailer is that if people find out that there's alcohol in it, are they gonna try to be breaking into that? Is that something that we really wanna do when the liquor extension will go to 2 more units in that mini mall? I just personally feel that the 2 units in the mini mall would be sufficient, that they maybe wouldn't need the trailer. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't know what everybody else thinks. Thank you. Any other comments on that? No? Jay, Gary?
I know when we discussed this, we did talk about the trailer and talked about that it wasn't going to be refrigerated, so we weren't concerned about it disturbing the neighbors. I understand what you're saying, Mary, about is somebody going to try to break in there? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of surprised that the owner wants that much additional space, a truck plus those 2 suites. But I wasn't sure why he was requesting that. What we may want to do then, if there is this concern and everybody on the board kind of has that concern, why don't we just table this and go back and ask the owner, are you going to need these 2 suites and the trailer? I mean, I do agree. It does seem like a lot, and I don't know why he's asking it to be extended all the way to June. Yeah.
Well, and maybe if our concern is the trailer, if we're all okay with the 2 other places, we could approve that part of it and then just say, you know, get back to us on the trailer and decide then at a next meeting if we want to go there or not.
Yeah, I think we could do that, approve the 2 spots in the mini mall, and then we can come back with the trailer.
That's fair enough.
I would agree.
Okay, does anybody want to?
So I'll make the motion that we approve the 2 spots within the mini mall, but to exclude the outdoor trailer.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the 2 interior spots at the mini mall, but exclude the trailer for the temporary alcohol license extension. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, number 9, public hearings. 9A, public hearing regarding ordinance number 02-1-25, final planned unit development PUD request for a multi-use residential development on parcel VA-L333-2, Alice Pagels LLC property. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this project? Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this project? Yes, sir. Could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Rob Coleman. I live at 3681 Woods Edge Way. I do not support this plan development because of the addition of multifamily rental units into an existing R1 single-family neighborhood. The Sand Acre neighborhood I live in now is primarily residential nature, with about 400 single-family homes there now. If you use the average lot size of the homes as a guide, you could add about 60 new homes into this planned 40-acre development. The developer, though, is planning on adding 128 units to this area, doubling the density. Right now, there are only 4 streets to get in and out of the neighborhood. Not only is the developer doubling the number of units that should be there, but he is not adding any additional streets in or out of the area. Currently, there are 5 major apartment rental projects being built in Ashwaubenon: Sparks 152, Promenade, Marina Lane, Commonplace 2, and Cypress. These, along with the recently completed apartments like Bohemia Park and Element, Berkshire, all have the same thing in common. All of these apartments are located on or adjacent to major roads, like Packerland, Maine, Holmgren Way, Oneida, Broadway, McCarthy Lane. These are all 4-lane, 30-35 mile-an-hour roads. These apartments want high visibility on major streets. Their appeal is that they have easy in and out access to major roads for their tenants. You do not have to drive through a residential neighborhood to get to any of these apartments. Additionally, all of these apartments are adjacent to industrial and commercial areas. They are a buffer between residential areas. They are not located in the middle of them. But to get to this proposed apartment complex, you have to drive through a winding dead-end residential street to get there. The most desirable and most expensive lots of a residential neighborhood are usually those located on cul-de-sacs. But for some reason, this developer is putting a 64-unit apartment there instead of single-family homes. There's a thought that the development like this will allow people to remain in one area, that they will move from the apartment to a single-family home. But in reality, I would say people that would move out of these apartments would not move into a single-family home there, mainly for the reason nobody in a single-family home wants to live next door to an apartment building. The planned location of these apartments are also adjacent to a beautiful wooded ravine with a creek running through it. These would be highly desirable single-family lots, home sites that the developer himself said could have values of up to $800,000. This would also align with the village comprehensive housing goal, which is, quote, promote high-value residential infill at key locations of budding rivers and other natural amenities. Even though this 40-acre development is zoned R1 single family, the developer has 84 duplexes, townhomes, and apartments in his plan. These units could easily instead be changed into at least 17 single-family home sites. This would then create the 40-acre development with a total of 61 single-family homes, which is much more in line with what the density should be. Additionally, these 17 single-family homes could create a higher tax base. Let's be clear. These apartments are proposed are lower-end apartments. These are not high-end rental units with floor-to-ceiling glass, underground parking, and various amenities like the Element or Bohemia Place. Those would create higher tax values. By making this development all single-family homes, you would create a higher tax base to ensure we're getting the services we deserve. There are actually hundreds of acres of available land in western Ashwaubenon, which would be better suited for these townhome or apartment rentals. They are also located in areas and by roadways that developer and tenants want. In conclusion, I think anyone, all of us who live next to or by this farm field knew at some time this would be developed. It shouldn't come as a surprise. A surprise, though, would be if it wasn't developed into single-family homes. We all bought here knowing that this was zoned R1 single family. What is the point of zoning an area if you only cave into a developer to switch the zoning to get what he wants? This planned development should follow the village complementary housing guide and be denied until it is changed to all single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this development? Okay.
My name is Kim Eparvier, and I have more of an inquiry. I guess for the benefit of the resident, first of all, my address is 3710 Woods Edge Way. For the benefit of the homeowners in Woods Edge Way, could the village president or its attorney explain the state statutory authority provided to property owners to petition a municipality to detach property from a municipality?
I would defer to village legal counsel.
That would be providing legal advice to you. I recommend that you get your own attorney and receive legal advice for that question.
Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this development? Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this development? Okay, one more time, I'm going to say if there's anybody who would like to speak for or against this development. Okay, hearing none, then I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the public hearing is closed. We'll go to action items. 10A, consider discuss act on ordinance 02-1-25, final planned unit development PUD request for a multi-use residential development on parcel VA-L333-2, Alice Pagels LLC property. Aaron.
All right, thank you. I will share my screen to bring up an image of the requested final planned unit development. As discussed, there's the proposed PUD does include a mixture of single-family, duplex, townhome, and apartment buildings, as indicated in the development. Lot sizes for the single-family homes are similar to what you see at the Woods Edge development to the south. The townhome and duplex units are also to be owner-occupied, while the apartment units are to be rental units. You see here the street, Pagels Place, is to be extended through the eastern part of the property with a future connection to the north to Spirit Way at West Main Avenue. There's also a secondary connection at Ponds Edge Court to the south right here. The property is currently zoned R1 one-family residence, so the request is for the planned unit development overlay to allow for the proposed mix of residential uses and the following variations from the standard zoning requirements, including 56-foot lot frontage at the building setback line, minimum 25-foot front yard setback, except for lots 34 and 35, which have a standard 20-foot front yard setback, minimum 5-foot side yard setbacks, minimum 20-foot rear yard setbacks, and minimum 7,000 square foot lot size. There's also a couple additional modifications, including an extension of the Sand Acres Trail that you see here through this portion of the property, berming around the Arts Lane subdivision right here at the request. That came out of some of the discussion that happened during the preliminary plan unit development discussion. There's also a stormwater pond that the village will take ownership of right here with access again off of Pagels Place extension. In terms of the recommended conditions of approval, we have a few of them. I do want to note that as I mentioned, the preliminary PUD was approved by Village Board, and the final PUD was recommended for approval at the Site Plan Review Committee and Planning Commission meetings earlier this month. The recommended conditions of approval, there's a few of them, so let me just read through those for the record. Approval of the final subdivision plat for Winding Creek Estates. Submittal of a lighting plan with photometrics that has light trespass at no more than 0.5 foot candles at property boundaries or to at least no more than currently exists on site. Inclusion of sidewalks on all or both sides of all public streets. All parking areas, landscape islands, and drive areas are to have curbing, either conventional, curb pan, or rolled. Screen any rooftop or ground mounted mechanical units visible from the property boundaries or street rights of way. Use of fully concealed fasteners for exterior wall panels. Approval of development agreement between the developer and village for subdivision improvements. Submittal of detailed site plans and elevations for the townhome apartment development of lots 22 and 23. Include language regarding contractors not using the Misty Meadows condominium development private drives in the construction bidding documents. I should note this came out of a discussion that we held with the board of the Misty Meadows condo and discussion with the developer following that. Meet all applicable requirements of the Ashwaubenon site plan review and all other applicable village ordinances. From engineering, submittal of detailed utility and civil plans for village staff review and approval. Stormwater management, submittal of detailed stormwater management and erosion control plans for village staff review and approval. Provide adequate access easement to the stormwater pond. From public safety, police and fire, coordinate with Ashwaubenon Public Safety regarding FDC and key box locations for multifamily units. Coordinate with Ashwaubenon Public Safety regarding fire hydrant locations, internal turning radii for the multifamily units. From forestry, submittal of a detailed landscape plan and planting schedule with final engineering plans. From bike and ped, identification of bicycle parking locations for the apartment buildings, meeting the standards of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. I should note that the townhome and apartment units will have to come back through Site Plan Review Committee for review and approval when those designs are finalized. So those will be off in the future a little bit. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, the development team is also in the audience if you have any questions for them.
Before we start this, what I'd like to say is, I have to compliment the developer of this project. He met with a lot of the neighbors in those neighborhoods and went through the concerns that they had and changed a lot of the items that were there. And he did cut down on the amount of some of the townhomes. I mean, he's really listened to the residents over there. So I have every confidence that he will continue to do things right. So anyway, any other comments on this?
I just have a couple of questions, Aaron, and I don't know if it's here or the next agenda item that'll be more appropriate. But reading through your document, your memo, we're talking about the plan unit development objectives in our ordinances. And on section 3, it talks about the preservation and enhancement of important environmental features. And you do mention some items in there. The question I had for Aaron earlier today was in regard to lot 24. A huge lot, it's adjacent to the stormwater pond. And my concern on that, or my question on that, was whether that should be village-owned versus attached to lot 24. And again, maybe this isn't the right document to talk about. It should be in the next one.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely a subdivision plating question.
Okay, then I will hold the next one on public facilities for that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
I had a question about the streets. The concern that the gentleman raised about the volume of traffic that's going to be created by having all those apartments and townhomes. Has the appropriate committee looked at that and determined that those streets are going to handle that traffic?
Yeah, actually, the Planning Commission had a pretty extensive discussion about traffic, both at the preliminary PUD and also at the final PUD standpoint. They did look at that. It's not optimal to have one primary exit to the property at Pagels Place onto Sand Acres, or I'm sorry, South Ridge. There's a future plan to connect it to the north to Spirit Way, which of course would alleviate that traffic. Now there's no timeline for when that connection can happen. That's up to that property owners to decide if and when they would like to develop. But at this time, there's not a major concern for traffic. You know, will there be an occasional couple of cars backed up at the stop sign? Likely, but really no more than would be otherwise.
Aaron, do we know what the timeline is approximately, and maybe the developer knows as well, when he thinks the multifamily and the townhouses will be built? I'm assuming the residential homes will go first.
I'll defer to the development team for their timing.
Could I have you come up and state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. Craig Kasner, 1500 Waterford Drive. Tracy, with regards to the timing, I would probably think it would be 26, 27, you're correct, in the assumption that the residential development would start first.
And then how about with the townhouses and stuff? How much beyond that would you be looking, or don't you really know right now?
We'd be guessing. In a perfect world, we've had discussions with the property owner that would be between the end of Pagels Place, where the cul-de-sac is, and Main Street, Spirit Way. But they're just at this time not interested. If we had a better idea, we'd try to work the timing so that we could let that get open up first. Would certainly probably alleviate a lot of the traffic concerns the neighbors had.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Being on the committees that approve, go through the drawings and whatever with the developers, the people involved in it, we did some extensive work on that to make sure it accommodated everything in our ordinances that, like I said, make this work. I know the team, including the village staff, spent a lot of time on this. to make sure that the peoples at Woods Edge could be as happy as they could be. We had one meeting where a resident from Woods Edge came in and really complimented it on all the people involved in this, on how well they adjusted to the Woods Edge wants. The biggest concern at that time was making sure that the construction equipment would not run through their property. That was a must so that they didn't damage the roads that were really not made for that type of equipment, which was taken care of by the developer and okayed by the staff. So I do not see any problem with this. The people at Woods Edge knew this was going to come along. I understand the concerns of the apartment and the townhomes, but in time, we're hoping, I shouldn't say we are, I hope the developer can do something by opening that Pagel Way up into the main street. That main street's a tough intersection to start with. I use that myself quite a bit. You come down Spirit Way, you drive right into that property where that road could come out. That's a tough intersection. I would have to foresee a stop and go light there in order to maintain the traffic from Holgram onto Main Street and vice versa through the development that's going there. But I think that'll take some time before that happens. So I think what the people have done for Woods Edge, I think the team did a very good job on taking care of their concerns. So if there's no other questions, I'll move to approve this development at Pagel Way and with staff conditions, if there's no other questions.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve with staff conditions. This gentleman would like to know if we can open the floor. We would have to open the floor, sir, to have you comment on anything.
I'll motion to open the floor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is open. Please state your name and address again.
My name is Rob Coleman, 3681 Woods Edge Way. The one comment was the people of Woods Edge knew what was coming. I don't understand that comment because knew what was coming. Did we know at any time in the last 9 years that there was going to be an apartment complex built next to us in an R1 residential? I'm not sure what the meaning of we knew what was coming. We built there knowing that the open lot was zoned R1 residential. Wouldn't most of you think that if you lived in a neighborhood with single-family homes and the adjoining land was R1, would you not think that anything in the future would be R1 single-family homes? How did we know that this was coming, that someday an apartment building would be built back against our wooded ravine? That's my concern and question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll need a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor say, oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
We have one more gentleman. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Hillert. I live at 1036 Misty Meadow Circle, and I'm part of the Misty Meadow one. I just want to correct, please, or clarify the record. It was a group of the board from Misty Meadow that met with the subcommittee, Mrs. Kardowski and Mr. Schutte and others, and we were the ones. And again, our concern is within the Misty Meadow complex, we do not have a legal street. It is a private road. So the construction of the road is totally different than any of the other streets. We've been grandfathered in. It was done years ago. So just so they understand that that was not the Woods Edge people.
Right.
You know, I'm sure they have concerns as well as I do, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I need a motion to close the floor again.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the floor is closed. Now, we have a motion and a second to accept ordinance number 02-1-25, final PUD request for multi-use residential development on parcel VA-L333-2 Alice Pagels LLC property. Any other questions from the board?
Aaron, can I just check one thing for you? So this is a PUD. So with a PUD, you can have residential, we can have townhouses, we can have apartments. So this fits with this development, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sorry, the first and second was with staff conditions. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10B, consider, discuss, act on the Winding Creek Estates preliminary subdivision plat parcel VA-L333-2. Aaron?
All right, thank you. I'll share my screen again. I'll bring up the subdivision plat. Hopefully. There we go. All right, so this is the second part of really a two-step process. We had the PUD, which is the zoning process. The subdivision plat, in this case, this is the preliminary subdivision plat. That is the actual process of subdividing the property into the subject lots as submitted by Troy Hewitt of Robert E. Lee and Associates as the applicant for the owner of VHC Incorporated. It is important to note that under state statutes, a preliminary plat is preliminary in name only. A preliminary plat is really the important part to really work out any details that may need to be worked out. The final plat basically is, if it's substantially similar to a preliminary plat, it is entitled to approval. So again, this is really where the details need to be worked out if there's anything to work through. Just a quick overview, as noted, similar to the PUD, you do see the single-family lots. The Outlot 3, which is the proposed stormwater pond with access off of Winding Creek, Pagels Place, I'm sorry. Lot 22 is for the townhomes duplexes. Lot 23 is the proposed apartment location as well. There will be a temporary cul-de-sac right here for the extension of Pagels Place until such time as it is extended further to the north. I should note we do have certain required utility, street, and other improvements. They do include storm sewer, curb gutter, street lighting with fiberglass poles, and I should note that should not be shoebox fixtures, that should be Cobra head fixtures. Correct, Brian? Okay, thank you. Sanitary sewer and water main, sewer, water, storm sewer laterals, and sidewalks are required on both sides of new streets. All of which will be included within the development agreement that will be developed along with the final plat. There is a 16-foot trail easement, again, for an extension of Sand Acres Trail to connect to Arts Lane. There is a little connection gap, so the easement at this time will wrap around the lot to connect to Arts Lane and eventually out to West Main Avenue. In terms of recommended staff conditions, I'll read through those again for the record here. Revise the recreational trail easement granted to the village of Ashwaubenon to be 20 feet wide and follow the outside boundary of parcel VA-L333-2-4 to allow for a continuous connection to Arts Lane right-of-way. Number 2, revise the 10-foot drainage easement to 12 feet on lots 1 through 12 per village code. Number 3, increase the storm sewer easement width between lots 7 and 8 from 12 feet to 20 feet to allow adequate space for equipment. Number 4, overlay the proposed pond on Outlot 3 over the plat to be sure there's a 12-foot level area around the pond. To be able to maintain the pond in the future, property line shall also include the entire berm for the pond. Prepare a detailed stormwater management plan with calculations and erosion control for review and approval by the village engineer. Confirm the rear yard drainage for lots 12 through 22 and lots 28 through 46 and review the potential need for a stormwater management facility for lots 1 through 20 and lots 38 through 46. Number 6, prepare detailed engineering plans for review and approval by the village engineer. Review sanitary sewer plans for the eastern part of the development, a potential need for a 30-foot easement and connection to the new water interceptor sewer. Number 7, indicate the shoreland zone area on the final subdivision plat map. Number 8, replace the name Winding Creek Way with a continuation of Pagels Place. Number 9, preparation and adoption of a formal development agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and the developer. Specific details to include but not limited to utility and roadway, street lighting, sidewalks, cluster mailboxes, street trees, design, construction, warranty, and payment. Process for deeding Outlot 3 to the village for stormwater management purposes. Number 10, provision of documentation regarding approval for wetland filling on Lot 22. Number 11, development of construction documents meeting village specifications for public improvements and submittal to village staff for review and approval. Number 12, payment of any required park fees. Number 13, approval of a PUD overlay ordinance for the subject property by Village of Ashwaubenon. And number 14, approval of the preliminary plat by the Brown County Planning Commission. Should be noted the Ashwaubenon Planning Commission did recommend approval of the preliminary plat with staff conditions at its February 4th, 2025 meeting. In terms of the question Trustee Fluke brought up earlier, I'll just note Lot 24, as currently depicted here on this map, you see right here is Lot 24, and it does actually include all of the eastern boundary and northern boundary of the property, basically to this area over here, wrapping around the stormwater pond and back to Pagels Place. Comes out to be about 10 acres, of which really only the area by the number 24 is actually developable due to the extensive floodplain, floodway, and environmentally sensitive areas throughout that area. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, again, the development team is in the audience. If you have questions for them.
Okay, my question again, so it's the right time now. In our planned unit development that we just approved, one of the objectives is to preserve and enhance important environmental features. And Lot 24 is huge. It's 10 acres. It'll be owned by one property owner, an individual property owner. And my question is, does the Village of Ashwaubenon, would it be better served to have the Village of Ashwaubenon owning that area? There's a creek in there, there's environmental sensitive areas, there's floodway areas in there. To have more control, to be able to make sure that is preserved and handled properly, and maybe even open it up for public use, that the public can get through there and explore that area and enjoy that area. So that was my question on that particular lot. If it is a benefit for, and again, the developer is sitting in the room, but for the Village of Ashwaubenon to have ownership of that versus whoever purchases Lot 24.
I guess that's really a value proposition for the board to discuss. We certainly can take direction from the board to enter discussions with the developer if that's a direction so provided by the board. So I guess I leave it up to the board to really kind of give us that direction if that's indeed the way you'd like us to go.
I guess my question would be is, could that just be resurveyed and be included as the in the Outlot 3?
It's a matter of, I guess, talking with it certainly can be reworked from a technical standpoint pretty easily.
I guess I would like, I'd like the developer, Craig, if you could step forward and just kind of, what was the thought process that Lot 24 wrapped all the way around there and that, so.
Give me my name and address again, Mary.
Yeah,
sure. Craig Kastner, 1500 Waterford Drive. So Tracy and Jay, just to give you a little bit of background, when we looked at the size of the lot, it was previously attached to the apartment site. And from a standpoint of the apartments, we just, didn't see a need to have it that big. We thought economically that if we attached it to Lot 24, which was the only place that it could go to besides being a part of the multifamily site 23. We thought we'd just have a higher economic benefit of, the development of that lot with the additional square footage. So that's why we put it there. We certainly think if there was a buyer, someone would certainly be more interested in having a lot that had, 10-plus acres. So we thought we had a unique opportunity. Tracy, to your question.
Craig, could it be resurveyed so that it could especially the part that goes around the outlot?
Yeah.
3, couldn't that not be included in the outlot 3?
So Jay,
Or is there a reason it can't?
Yeah, so Jay, when we had earlier discussions, with the village, one of the thoughts was maybe we could try to bring a trail system down into that area. So to Tracy's point, maybe create something that had a unique feature and we could try to tie it into there. It just, at that point, we didn't know where we were going to be going with this, our approval basis. I would certainly be willing to explore the opportunity to maybe bring something in there, bring it around the apartments, the stormwater pond, and possibly tie it back up into any future development that, if we were able to secure that other property, or potentially any other developer could maybe tie it into that.
I mean, we talk a lot, and Rex can maybe comment on this more, about the overuse, how people love Sand Acres Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's really busy. And to have another space, another park for people to go to and maybe take some pressure off of Sand Acres, to include that, like Jay said, maybe including it with the outlot for 3 and having the potential for a pathway and some use of that facility, and for the village to keep a better eye on that facility as far as stormwater management, because it's an important creek. There's a lot of water coming through there, and making sure things are handled properly.
So, Jay, to answer your question, could it be resurveyed? We have two surveyors here, but I think I feel pretty comfortable saying yes, it could certainly be resurveyed. We are working on another piece in another community, without getting into the specifics, where there is a trail system in Green Bay, the Baird Park Trail System, and we have some property opportunities where we would be giving it to them. So, I don't know if I'm in a position to say what we'd all do, Tracy, but I will tell you, we'd certainly be willing to work with the village and create a benefit that would, be nice for the public. Taking into consideration, some homeowners maybe don't want something behind their house, and I guess we'd have to at least try to respect, that, but I promise you we would sit down and take a look at trying to bring some value to the village.
Okay. And so I guess I would ask Aaron, could that be added as an additional line item that would have to be reviewed and followed up on as a part of the approval of this?
Yeah, we certainly can add that as a condition of approval. It'll give us some flexibility to make sure we don't have to come back through. There's just certain statutory processes you have to go through with a preliminary plat. So I want to make sure that whatever we do, we make sure we don't have to come back through a preliminary platting process by either adding or subtracting a lot. So I want to make sure that whatever we put in here as a condition of approval gives us that flexibility, and we make sure then that we don't mess something up at the county as well, because they're concurrently reviewing this plat as well. But I can work with Troy and Craig on that.
The other part of it, just to make sure, and again, I don't know if this has to be denoted, because we do have that access point to get to the pond with a maintenance drive, and then I know there's a 12-foot flat area adjacent to the pond. I just think it might be important to have in there noted that that's also available for people to walk and use, because if someone buys lot 24 and all of a sudden there's people walking through there, they may not be real excited about that, but for people to know that from day one, that this is a maintenance drive, but it also can be used for walking and biking around that pond, I think that's important to have in there as well.
Okay, so do we approve it with those conditions added, or?
Yes, that'd be added conditions to the plat.
Okay.
You know, a question I have to that subject of people viewing that detention pond. I don't think we have any detention ponds in the village that we have viewing areas. So I don't know about that statement, but Craig, I'm sure that you were looking at that lot as a bonus lot with all that land there, looking for some potential buyer to build something nice, really nice on that property.
Yeah, that's correct, Gary, but by the same token, there's a lot of land there. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's more than one person needs, so if we work something out, and to that point, if they want to use it, they'll just have, you know, a really good access to being able to use it too, so.
Yeah, they'll be able to access it if it's public anyway. And they can't build on much of that lot because it's, you know, it's got a lot of floodway and ESA in it, so.
To Aaron's point, there's a small buildable area and it's
Right.
kind of up by where the number enumerates the lot number, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the plot map is presented with staff conditions.
And Gary, does that include the, what we just talked about?
The added
I
condition?
I guess I have to. It's kind of a decision that you people talked about. I'd leave that up for discussion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary subdivision plat with staff conditions and the added conditions. And does anybody have any discussion on that? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 10C, consider, discuss, act on a site plan review for an addition to Stadium View Bar and Grill at 1963 Holmgren Way, parcel VA-31-2-7. Aaron?
All right, thank you. What I'm going to do is again, show my screen.
Thank you.
All right, and this should jump over to, there you go, elevations of the Stadium View. The proposal from Stadium View is to enclose the second floor patio area that extends out from their second floor bar area. There were just basically the exterior finishes are very similar to what's currently on site, fully concealed fastener, metal wall panels. There was a change of color, not that we regulate color at all, but just for informational purposes. There will be more of a copper color paneling up here on the top part of the facade. But that was really about the only change that happened between Plan Commission. Here was just, again, the color. Both Site Plan Review Committee and Planning Commission did recommend approval with staff conditions, of which only condition was the use of fully concealed fasteners as required by our Site Plan Review Ordinance.
Okay. Any comments or a motion?
I'd recommend approval of the site plan review for Stadium View Bar and Grill with staff conditions.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the site plan review for addition to Stadium View Bar and Grill with staff conditions. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10D, consider, discuss, act on appeal of denied operator's license, Kailey Hill. I will let the chief take this.
Kailey was in the audience tonight, but has now left.
Yeah.
So I think we can just continue to move on. This was an appeal of a alcohol license and has gone through committee and again was denied, and she is not here any longer.
Okay. Anybody?
Chief, you said she left the premise?
She did.
That is correct.
I'll move to deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny the appeal for Kailey Hill for an alcohol operator license. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're now gonna go to L. Consider, discuss, act on a request to amend the village code to regulate performance standards. Okay, who's taking that one?
I can take that.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Madam President. At the request of trustee Flukie, the following item is being presented for consideration by the village board. So tonight's action by the village board won't be to enact an ordinance, but rather kind of defer the item forward if the board decides that it is an item that it wants to take up at a future meeting. And the reason for that is the proposed language that is being presented to you would reside within chapter 17, which is our planning and zoning chapter. So it would be a zoning code provision. And under statutory law, zoning codes do need and require recommendation from the planning commission as well as public hearing. So being that this is kind of the first reading, if you will, if we were not a village and a city and we had a requirement to go through a reading process, this would be kind of like that first reading, if you will. So the ordinance itself is specifically to address concerns as it relates to performance standards, in particular in industrially zoned districts. The draft that is in your packet also encompasses commercially zoned districts as well. So anything R1 through R3 would not be a component of this. Again, only things identified in commercial or industrial districts. What this code provision does is it enhances ultimately what is in large part already codified within our code as it relates to noise, smell, sound, things of that nature. So the code itself talks about very specific objective standards as it relates to noise activities. Again, within commercial and industrial districts, there is a separate table for industrial districts as opposed to commercial districts, with a higher degree of allowance for those commercial districts just because of the nature of the activity in which they're performing. In addition to that, there are two paragraphs that identify conditions and regulations related to vibration. It should be noted that construction type activity or that temporary maintenance type activity would be exempt from that. So as an example, if a business is performing some type of construction activity, oftentimes you have dump trucks that come in and they put their vibration on their box and it creates quite a bit of rattle and some sound. That would be exempt from that chapter. So if we had a hauling, dumping, or loading type operation, that would be exempt. In addition to this talks about external lighting, which is just a reference to existing Chapter 17, Article 6. So there's no new provisions there. It does talk about odor. In regards to odor, it references Wisconsin Administrative Code, which is the Natural Resources Code, Chapter 429. We currently have a noxious odor ordinance within a separate chapter. What this would effectively do is create some objective guidance as to how we begin the enforcement process. And just to kind of touch on that briefly, under Wisconsin Admin Code for malodorous admissions, as an example, if we were to perform an enforcement under the draft language that's presented tonight, there's two tests that have to be met. The first test would be somebody from our agency, so our inspector, if you will, would have to perform a number of inspections. Based on those inspections and based upon the nature, intensity, frequency, and duration of the odor and the area involved, they could ultimately determine that there is a violation to the code. Beyond that, it does require a 60% random sample survey to persons that may have been exposed to that malodorous odor. So that standard is much steeper than our current nuisance ordinance. So I just want to point that out, that this is more objective, but maybe harder to achieve to maintain an enforcement provision within that odor concern. Beyond odor, it talks about particulate emissions, visible emissions, and other hazardous pollutants, again referencing Natural Resources Code within Wisconsin Admin Code. The one thing I'll note here is that although it does provide some very objective references to other codes, these are areas that are outside of, shall I say, the expertise of village staff. We do not have the expertise to conduct assessments for hazardous pollutants. That would be something the DNR or even the EPA would have to be involved in. So to some degree, this section of code is rather redundant in that those agencies would be the ones directly involved in those issues. Certainly, if it's referenced within our code, could we issue citations? Yes, but it would be difficult for our staff to prove through court that we had the expertise to then enforce the code. So we do have some concerns from a staff perspective that although they sound nice on paper, they may be very difficult for us to investigate and enforce based on some of the provisions within the code. Beyond that, especially as it relates to sound, we would require either special equipment or training in order to have the proper device to measure the sound to make that section of code enforceable either. So those are all things that I think the board should take into consideration as it considers whether or not this draft ordinance would go forward to Planning Commission for recommendation and then ultimately back to Village Board for final approval after a properly noticed public hearing. So with that, Aaron is obviously here. He in large part, Will Ingalls, our code enforcement officer, would be predominantly involved in the enforcement aspect of it, and so they can certainly answer any questions that you may have about how we would go about actually enforcing the provisions of the code.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
So Joel, I guess, and this was one of my concerns, the enforceability of it. Like you said, I agree with everything that's written, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to enforce it. And I guess I would also reach to Tony and ask him, do you see us being able to enforce what we're discussing that we put together as an ordinance?
I would echo what Joel's comments were. I think enforcement is going to be difficult. For example, the sound level would require, as indicated by Joel, special equipment, training that needs to be conducted, calibration, things of that nature to substantiate and verify, say, the sound decibel levels. So it's very particularized training as well as very particular equipment that needs to be purchased, maintained, and trained upon. And then with respect to the administrative code provisions, again, that'd be somewhat redundant. That's going to be more specialized. That's going to be provided by enforcement through the state primarily.
So Tony and maybe Joel, either one. So let's take Odor, for instance. We're putting in here now NR 429, so that's Wisconsin code. So what you're saying is if this is adopted, we really can't enforce anything. It would go to Wisconsin DNR and EPA potentially. Is that correct, or am I reading that wrong?
Well, we would essentially adopt by reference the
Right.
standard.
Yep.
If we were to enforce it under our code, so a municipal citation were to be issued, we'd have to meet one of those two standards of either one of our own designees, so our code enforcement officer or some designee from the village would have to do what we currently do, even with our nuisance ordinance requirement for odor, right? So we go out, we investigate, we test, we determine duration, frequency, intensity, so we have a scale. That would be relatively the same as to what we're doing now, so there would be kind of redundancy by labeling it in the code. But by also labeling it within the code that we are going to do that specifically, now we do have a standard that we have to uphold. And if we fail to uphold that standard in enforcement, then those types of situations may be lost in court as well, right? So if you just took, for example, complaints from citizens and said, well, I got 4 complaints, that won't hold up in court because there won't have been a thorough investigation to determine if there was proper duration, frequency, intensity, and the circumstances surrounding it. So I think we would want to be careful with that. The way we have our code written now, there is to some degree some flexibility. Of course, we have to work through the process of case law and things of that nature. Tied to that as well, that standard of that 60% threshold, that could be more stringent than what is considered an appreciable number of persons, right? So how do we get to a standard where we would be able to survey 60% of the households that may have been affected by it to say that it was an actual malodorous odor?
Okay.
How many complaints do we get? Not necessarily, I guess, complaints, but how many people are complaining about a single property that this would even affect? Like, is it worthwhile even for the equipment, the training, all that to even go down this road?
Well, I'll kind of introduce it, and Aaron and Will can touch on a little bit. So most of the complaints that we get in relation to these types of issues are single property type issues. As an example, over the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years, we've had some noise complaints, specifically with one industry. We've had some odor complaints with a specific industry. Generally speaking, if we're able to identify the industry quickly, we can address it by working directly with them, which we attempt to do. If we need to go through an enforcement mechanism, we have. In other cases, there's situations, noise being one of them, where it was just difficult to pinpoint because an individual would hear it, and then by the time you were able to respond to it, the noise was gone or some condition had changed and we were not able to verify it at the time of the complaint. So those situations also become problematic, and it would be no different under this code, even with the standard of octaves and decibels. We would get a complaint, let's say, and by the time we get out there, they would be then in compliance, or we couldn't find the sound. So it'd be, again, just as challenging under this code as it currently is under our existing code.
I know there's some residents here that would like to speak, so maybe we could open the floor at this point, unless there's the board has other questions, but make a motion to open the floor.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, if anybody would like to speak on this item, you're more than welcome to come up. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Gertz. My address is 2982 South Ridge Road. First of all, thank you for all the work everyone's put in to start working on this ordinance update. We've been fighting the issue for literally several years. I mean, I'll be told, we go back to Ted Pamprin days fighting some of the noise issues that we've had. And at times it gets so bad that we cannot enjoy our outside yard whatsoever in terms of the fragrance coming. When the wind's out of the south and a certain company is producing, we cannot sit outside. I mean, absolutely not. Same thing with the noise. I mean, we can hear it through our walls in the house in the evening, you know, different frequencies coming through, vibrating. And I know there's other individuals throughout the area that do it as well, or hear it as well. You know, I don't want to imply that every business is bad. I think we have a fantastic business base in Ashwaubenon, and there's a lot of companies. You can go out there and say Green Bay Packaging. I mean, they do a marvelous job with what they've built out there. You don't hear them, you don't smell them, you don't see the lights. Bellin, another one that just went up, fantastic. You don't hear any of this. So I think we have several companies that are causing issues throughout this industrial park and throughout the village. You know, and because it's difficult to enforce, I don't think is a good issue not to enforce it. You know, if we have to buy the equipment to do it, I think we need to buy the equipment to do it, train our individuals, because Ashwaubenon's only gonna grow. We've seen that tonight. This issue is gonna continue to get bigger. I went for a walk today and there's another business that's actually starting to emanate some smell. And it's like, where does it stop? So if we don't do the right thing, and I know you guys all want to do the right thing, if we don't do the right thing and put some teeth in this ordinance and give us the ability to stop these individuals from doing what they're doing, it's just going to get worse. And your time is going to be taken up because you're going to continue to get these phone calls and you're going to continue to get these headaches, and you don't have the time to put in to do this. So I think we need to continue. I think there needs to be, I think the ordinance that is written is a good start. There's some issues in there. I just kind of glanced through it before I came. There's some things I think need updating and really tying it to external entities to try to enforce some of this stuff is gonna be problematic. You know, it's like if we hold the industrial park to one set of standards and individuals to another, what's to say that I can't start putting a smell or an odor blowing at my neighbor's yard? You can't do anything about it. Or the same thing with light ordinance, or the same thing with noise. So I think we need to continue this. I think we need to, you know, continue to update the ordinance that you guys have put together. I think it's a great start, but, you know, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this issue?
Hi, I'm Teresa Rosick. I live at 2982 South Ridge Road for 38 years. And a little bit of background about myself is, first of all, I earned a degree in Master's in Engineering Management. I taught 10 years at an engineering college. I've traveled the world mentoring leaders in engineering. And I've served on a lot of President's Advisory Board. In fact, I served 10 years at the Board of Ethics for Ashwaubenon. So why do I say this? Why should I tell you this? I've worked on the lighting ordinances and the noise ordinances starting in 1991, 2007, 1995. So I'm very familiar with this. First of all, I really want to thank and congratulate the staff and the leadership for taking this on, because I know it's not easy to update an ordinance, as you can see. And thank you, Will, for coming out and checking things. Honestly, we didn't get the ordinance right the first time. We didn't take all stakeholders' opinion into consideration. And honestly, it was a one-shift light industrial situation when the business park went in, and a few mid things. Now we have heavy industrial, which is, as we said, Green Bay Packaging is a fabulous neighbor. So the technologies have changed, and we are now 24/7, 365. And a lot of the corporations seem to know when the village offices go away for the night and for the weekend, and that's when things seem to happen. So we have no enforcement after hours. We pride ourselves on being 50% residential and 50% business. Unfortunately, we've gotten to this we versus them mentality, and it's not going to serve us now and in the long run. The ordinance draft is excellent. It's a great start, but as you can see, I got a few concerns about it, and what we had talked about is enforcing it. It's going to be a little bit different, and we need to step up the plate. We offered to get this industrial park going, but we have not done due diligence after that. I want to take this and resonate this. We are affecting a tremendous amount of stakeholders now and for future generations for what we're doing right now on this. So we need to get back to basics, in my belief, as I would tell any of my project managers or any of my leadership. We need to get all of our stakeholders involved. It's not just a we versus them. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, I think we need a stakeholder board or an industrial park citizen board back and forth. We need to also go to our neighbors. We have affected our neighbors, De Pere, Hobart, all the way to Alloway on this because of our industrial park. We're not being responsible neighbors. We can glean help from the health department, Brown County, and De Pere. They're excellent resources. We also have Clean Water Action. They are unbelievable knowledge on air quality and water issues that's going to stem from this. The Packers in the Titletown Hotel Entertainment District, we're affecting this. You can smell this all the way down into Hy-Vee and down to Ashwaubomay. It's not just our little burg. So how can we get this together in additional data? What I did on research on these kind of issues in other vicinities is the easiest thing is make an app, okay? We have an excellent new social media person that is really good at this. We can real-time data. With this, we can be transparent and collaborative, so we can work on this together. Short-term girl, we have a very big party coming in April. We don't want these issues going viral saying, oh my God, did you see what or smell that in Ashwaubenon? We don't want that. And the long-term goal is we want to make a vibrant, healthy for all of our future generations. This is not, as you see, this is not stopped in 25 years. We need to step up the plate, and we need to get certified and ready to do something about it. So at this time, I am formally requesting that we do some kind of stakeholder analysis. So thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, would anybody else like to make any comments about this item?
Hi, my name's Renee Vandenelsen. I live at 2906 South Ridge Road. I also want to thank Joel and Aaron and Will and Tracy for helping us with this. I know as you sit up there as the board, for you to not be in the environment that we encounter daily is truly unfair. I actually, after 2 meetings ago, I sat here and listened, and I had a conversation with Gary Paul after, because there were a few comments that he had made that I thought were very unfair. And I asked him to come to my home in my front yard and park his car and open his window, and he did. And I would love for Gary to share what he encountered that day. So I guess what I want to say is, I enjoy my beautiful yard. We made that so it's comfortable, it's peaceful. We have many people over. I am not able to do that. All of last summer, I was not able to enjoy my pool. The environment that surrounds me and the smells and the sounds that we're hearing is very effective. Mentally, it is really getting to me because I know what I am breathing is not what I should be breathing. And I know the sound is affecting people around me. So I thank you for working on everything you're working on. I don't understand how we're going to be able to say, okay, this reaches this level that you can do something about it. But with Teresa and Chuck and other people in the neighborhoods, I'm hoping that they can help in some way or fashion. But I need you to know as you sit there and probably think, oh my gosh, this isn't a big deal. I welcome you to come to my house anytime, and I would love for you to just sit outside and have a tea with me or a beer or whatever it is, and tell me how long you can sit out there. It's been well over a year. I walk my dog every morning, if not twice a day, and I literally come back stressed out by 6 a.m. every day because I cannot stand the smell. So I thank you for working on this. I can't believe how quickly that staff has gotten on this for us, for we the citizens. We just need to figure out how to stop it. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Okay, would anybody else like, come on up, state your name and address, please.
Good evening, my name is Carrie Blahoviak. I live at 1580 West Mario. I live several blocks away from the people that live next to these neighborhoods. And the first thing that got my attention was the noise that was brought to me. For the past couple years, I've been asking my husband, what is that whining noise? Is that our furnace? Is that our air conditioner? He goes down the basement and he says, no, that's not what it is. So where's this whining noise coming from? Yes, I live close to the airport, but I know the difference between an airport, a jet taking off, and a helicopter taking off, and this whining noise. It's not my furnace, it's not my air conditioner. So that's my biggest concern is the noise. And I would like to also thank you in the village administration, this board, for taking the time to look into this and looking into the enforcements. The other thing I'd like to bring up with this is the fact that we need to look at the future of Ashwaubenon, not only for ourselves, our children, the generations to come, but as a village that has shown for the 55 years I've lived in Green Bay, a desired place to live. We attract the great businesses. You can look at Oneida Street, and I mean, that is Restaurant Row. That is where the malls started to come and where people want to live. I live in a small ranch house, not because I want to live in a small ranch house, but because I want to live in Ashwaubenon. So that is a lot to think about when you're making decisions that affect the constituents of the Ashwaubenon. And I would also like to just request that the board continues to look into ways to enforce this. And as usual, everything does come with a cost, but hearing is a problem. People go tone deaf working and living in areas. Hearing is a disability. So we need to continue to look at these things and look at the cost of the people that live here and how we're spending our money, our tax dollars. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody else want to speak for this item while the floor is open? If not, I need a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the floor is closed. Okay, so what do we want to do? Adopt this? Or, excuse me, we can't vote on this tonight. We need a motion to direct staff to present a final ordinance.
Yeah, so if the board is interested in just proceeding with what's currently drafted, it would be something that would go to Plan Commission. The next scheduled Plan Commission meeting won't be till April. Then a public hearing would be held following their recommendation. And then after the public hearing, the board could theoretically adopt the ordinance at that time. There had been some requests from some of the members from the public to have some ad hoc groups or other committees formed to review that. That's certainly a policy decision that the board can make. That's completely up to the board and certainly within your purview and prerogative to do that. If you do end up doing that, certainly that would slow the progression of the ordinance, but that is good. Sometimes when government moves slow, that's for a purpose and a reason so that you get it right. So that's certainly an option that you can have as well, that you could delay direct deferment to Planning Commission so that you could formalize an idea around creating some type of ad hoc working committee, if you will, on this ordinance.
I mean, it appears from what Teresa's statements are, she has quite a bit of knowledge and has worked on it, but I don't know if it would work with the existing ordinance that staff has put together. And Teresa, you've obviously looked at that, to share your thoughts back with staff and give them that input so that they can look into it further and maybe don't really form an ad hoc, but allow for input and then staff looking into it further and then going from there. And if we can make the April deadline, that would be great. But otherwise, maybe it has to be pushed out a little bit to make sure we get some input.
My only caution, like Teresa said, we have a huge party coming in April, and I don't necessarily know that this is something we want to just shove into the April meeting. So, and as far as creating an ad hoc committee, we'd have to pick some people. I wouldn't want the people on an ad hoc committee that are just strictly affected by this one item. You would need a cross section of the community. So I think this would warrant further thought on it. So
Yeah, I would concur, Mary. I actually like the idea that she brought up about creating some sort of an ad hoc group. Like she said, let's get all the stakeholders involved. I realize that that takes more time, but I think to get it right, we should do that. The additional thing that I would like to throw in here is if we are going to go down this path, and I think it's all valid, there's going to be additional costs to the village as far as being able to enforce these types of situations, noise, odor, so on and so forth. What are those additional costs that we're looking at so that we have a full understanding that when we approve an ordinance and we're going to need this in order to uphold this in a court of law, what is the cost of that? What is the cost that that's going to be? You know, are we going to need another will? Are we going to need more equipment? What are those costs involved? So I don't see this being something that we should rush in to do April. I see this as being a bigger issue that needs to be researched more, get some input, get the stakeholders. I think some people in the meeting tonight probably do have some valuable input, and also I'd like to get some of those businesses involved out there, and let's get Green Bay Packaging involved. I mean, everybody keeps pointing out that they're doing it great. All right, well, how are they doing it?
Well, and we have a new attorney now, so maybe Tony will have some more insight into this as well, if he's worked with it in other places, and he's there going grimacing over there, but, you know, let's get his expertise and knowledge as well.
You know, a comment I have on this, first of all, I have not heard of any problem with noise. The only reason this thing has been brought up is the smell. Otherwise, it would not have been brought up. First of all, I think the staff is going to have to educate us on what problems have been brought up as far as noise, odor, erosion, whatever complaints we're getting in this village, we should be educated on so that we know what direction we should be going in. Uh, you know, they say it could get worse. You know, Ashwaubenon is built out. I don't see any mega plants coming to Ashwaubenon anymore. We don't have the ground for it. Not that a building can't be transformed into something, but as far as a big mega company coming, I think we're out of the ballpark on that one. So, but I'd like
I
to
can
be
definitely,
educated on the problems we got.
and I agree with you, Gary, and I can personally say that, yeah, I have been approached with noise issues. So, so I know that that has come up, and I know that Tracy has as well.
Yeah.
So there is definitely noise issues, and the odor issue we know is out there. Vibration, I don't think I've been approached with anything on that, but there's no reason not to look at that. And I will concur with you, Gary. I don't know that there's any big mega plant, but you know, all of a sudden they buy up a bunch of lots out there and tear down what's there, and they can be building one. So I think it's worth our investigation, but I think our investigation has to take time and get all those stakeholders involved.
Well, that ain't gonna happen overnight. There's no doubt about that. There's too much to learn about it
Absolutely.
first.
So what kind of a motion would staff like?
So
Direction?
I think if I could be so bold to offer the following, to obviously defer back to staff. I can reach out and talk with Teresa. She's got some pretty detailed notes on you. So we'll get those. I can compile them. And then in response to Jay and Gary, what we can do as a staff is we could put together a report of Will's activities, even predating Will, some code enforcement activities, give kind of a report on where things stand. We have a software that we use, so it's pretty easy to generate some reports and gather data and present that back to both the board and the plan commission for that matter. And then at that point, my initial thought is to kind of work through plan commission, because ultimately it's got to start with them anyway with a recommendation. If the board and plan commission want to create kind of a subgroup like they previously did with signage, we could do the same with this. But it really kind of starts with Plan Commission. Ultimately, they recommend it back to the board. But either way, we can report back to the board the activities of code enforcement and as well as the Plan Commission, and then present with Teresa's notes some comments to the draft ordinance or anything that we're missing. And just kind of go through it in a very deliberate, iterative type process. So my recommendation is refer it back to staff and then report back to the board.
Joe, what I'd like to see is the communities that are deeply involved in this around our area. You know, are we the only one digging at this, or is somebody else within our vicinity having problems or are solving the problems with whatever committees or whatever is going on?
And Gary, that can certainly be part of our internal kind of review and preparation for reporting back. And there's certainly communities throughout the state of Wisconsin that have had, whether it be odor or sound issues. If you travel down Interstate 41, there's a community just south of Wrightstown, Little Chute, that has a landfill in it. It's next to a paper mill in Kaukauna. It's got a coffee roasting facility. So there's odors coming from that community as well. We can reach out to communities throughout the state and figure out if they've done anything.
We've smelled Kaukauna for many years.
That'd be good.
Okay, so we need to.
I'll make the motion that Joel made.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to direct staff to bring this back to Plan Board and Village Board and compile some reports and talk with Teresa, and we'll get it all together and it'll come back.
So I think if it's agreeable based on that motion, I'll grab the information. Teresa, you and I can connect sometime over the next few days. I'll grab that, compile that information. We can introduce the conversation at Plan Commission even in April when they meet next, I believe, just as an introduction. And then from there, we talked about it already. April's going to be a little bit goofy for us, so we probably won't round back to the issue in earnest until after April of 24.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. 10E, consider, discuss, act on design for NRDA GLRI grant project at Ashwaubomay and Dutchman's Creek in the village of Ashwaubenon. Rex.
Okay. I've got a couple people here this evening. John Wader from Stantec, who is the lead on the design of this project, is here. And then also, I believe online is Jessica Brandt. Jessica is the Great Lakes Area of Concern Project Management Specialist. So what we've got, obviously, is this is the NRDA GLRI project. We had received a grant about a year and a half ago regarding Ashwaubomay and Dutchman's Creek, otherwise known as the ACDC projects. So maybe I'll just use that as a short acronym. This involves the fish sticks, the fish cribs along the shoreline of Ashwaubomay Park, as well as the Railroad Museum area. It involves stabilization of shoreline along Ashwaubomay Park, a couple different areas, one by the bridge and one on the northeast point. It involves additional aquatic and wildlife housing habitat, both in water and such as bird houses, purple martin houses, wood duck houses, stuff like that. It also involves a boat launch, a potential boat launch, if approved by the NRDA GLRI Council, a potential boat launch area, a kayak launch, at Ashwaubomay Creek. So on page 141 of your packet, you can kind of see the aerial view of Ashwaubomay, and 143, 143. And then on page 167, it shows what we're looking for on Dutchman's Creek. So again, I've got a few people here to try and answer questions that you may have. What we're looking for tonight is we're at over 60% design. All right, and so this is basically the same design that the village board saw 6 to 8 months ago. It's just been fine-tuned quite a bit. It involves the pollinator gardens, so on and so forth. So the next step for us would be to submit this to the NRDA GLRI Council, and they would take a look at it. They would take a look at everything that is proposed, and then they would decide if we get that grant award to move forward to do what we have proposed based off of these maps. If approved tonight, there's also probably going to be letters that would be mailed to the residents on Broadway again, similar to how we did the bridge, explaining what the project is. And then if any of them have concerns, there may need to be a public meeting held involving the DNR just to answer any of those concerns and questions they may have. So that being said, I guess I will stop talking myself and see what questions you, the village board, may have. What the process is, if it gets approved tonight, like I said, then we would start the notification process. Like, here's our design. What do you guys think to the general public? And then at the same time, it's rolling through NRDA GLRI Council for a potential grant award.
So here's my one question about this. You know, at the federal level, there's been talk about pulling grants.
Yep.
Any funding. I was just this morning out by the circle, the double E intersection where we're supposed to have the roundabout, and I thought about this. So are we going to get the grant funds to do this?
That's a good question that I can't ask. I don't know, Jessica, are you able to?
How far would we be into it before we would find out that we don't have these funds and no money to pay for it?
I will let Jessica from the DNR try and answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know how much information I can really provide on that. I think we are also in the position of not knowing exactly what funding we're going to have access to in the near term. We would be putting in the implementation request for Fish and Wildlife to consider in usually between March and May. I would hope by then we would have a little bit more clarity on what we can expect going forward. But at this point, we are all just waiting to hear. So I know that's not much of an answer, but that's what we know.
Jessica, is all the funds federal, or is there some state funds in this grant?
This is all federal funding. So the funding either comes from Fish and Wildlife or it comes from EPA.
So Rex, at what point are we going to start using village funds for this? Since I know this was all grant based, is there any village funds that, at what point is that going to happen?
The village funds would be basically staff time to try and implement the project were federal funds to be awarded.
Gotcha.
The project would be fully funded by the federal. Where any of our own dollars would come into effect would probably be 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Let's say the projects get built and now we have to do some spot treatments for the Phragmites that was cut down as part of the invasive species management, that type of thing. And that's really ongoing minimal maintenance expenses. That's kind of how this project was designed, so that it would minimize any long-term expenses to the village. But for the actual project to move forward and to be built, it would be fully funded by other sources.
So I'm not sure that it's really going to be impacting us, even if the grants aren't available at this point. So I don't see any reason why we should not approve this moving forward. If the grants suddenly get pulled, everything's just going to stop dead in the water. So I see no reason, and I'm actually going to make the recommendation that we approve these designs and move forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve these designs and move forward.
I just have one quick question. So the work that's been done to date, that Santac has done, that is all covered by a grant as well?
That was by an initial grant where the money has already been awarded to
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we already have gotten that money and that's all taken care of. Okay, Thank you.
Actually, I do have a question. I didn't notice whether the egret poles are included in this. Is there any way we could get those repaired as part of this? Because they're all falling apart.
John, would you be willing to go up to the microphone and answer that?
Oh, my God.
John Waiter, 157 Edmund Drive, Green Bay. We're efforting getting those platforms fixed right now through some discussions with ATC and one of their contractors.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Apparently, the materials that were initially used didn't stand up to some of the weather that we had, so they deteriorated quicker than expected.
Okay.
So we're looking to try and rectify that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move forward with this project. Any other discussion? All those say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10F, consider, discuss, act on the bid award for the Ashwaubomay River Trail Extension. Rex?
Need to find this. Hold on just a second. So the bid award, this is the Ashwaubomay Trail Extension, going from the bicycle racks, basically the trailhead that was put in as part of the overall bridge project. It's going around the exterior of Ashwaubomay Park, behind Ashwaubomay Lake, along the southern fence line down to the boat launch area. It also includes making concrete steps going from that boat launch area up to shelter number 4, which is, they're fairly heavily used right now. Basically, they're wooden railroad ties without any railing, not compliant at all, and fairly dangerous to use. So that's the overall project as a whole. So the bids, we originally bid this out, if you may remember, in January of '24, and the bids came in fairly high, somewhere around $580,000+. So Village Board denied the project at that time, and then we were told by the contractors that were all in attendance that we'd probably get a better price if we bid this out early in 2025, because then they can plug that in at any point in their work schedule. We did that. Excuse me. The low bidder came in at $513,284.35. That would be Peters Concrete. I believe that was about a. Excuse me, I'm catching whatever Mary has. Oh my gosh. I believe that was about a $70,000+ reduction in the initial bid. So that's how much lower it did come in. So initially, when this project was thought about several years ago, we had a budget number of $450,000, and that's what kind of has stayed in the planning process, which put us about $63,000 over. So what I'm asking for tonight, we would use TID 3 funding in the amount of $450,000, which was budgeted, and then the remaining money we would take out of our park development fund, $63,000 and change, and that would fully fund this particular project.
Okay. Any discussion, or we'll have a motion?
I'll make a motion to award the bid to Peters Concrete in the amount of $513,284.35.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid for the Ashwaubomay Trail in the amount of $513,284.35 to Peters Concrete. Any more questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone.
10G, consider, discuss, act on the transfer restricted for retirement funds to unassigned fund balance.
Hello, everybody. So this is related to another agenda item that's coming up with the resolution. So I'm going to talk in terms of the whole picture. So as you're aware, we have restricted funds for retirements, the village. In the years past, we used to have its own fund. We would take excess funds from the general. If we had at the end of the year, we'd transfer that over, and then we would use those dollars to pay for employee retirements of their accrual balances that they're due when they retire. In 2023, we eliminated the fund just as more of an accounting exercise. At the end of the year, we removed the fund and created a restricted reserve account to hold those same funds. And the balance is, at that time, is around $600,000 that sits out there. The idea was, at the end of the year, if we had retirements, if we needed to, we could transfer funds out of the restricted cash, put it into our general cash, and those funds would be available versus having to use other funding sources. So the resolution that's going to come up later will be part of this, the same dollar amount to actually amend the 2024 budget and to our expense levels to accommodate the $126,000 that we want to add to cover for the retirements that were paid out in 2024. So this motion here, this would be to transfer money out of that restricted account, restricted reserve account, which only the village board can do, to move it out and put it into just kind of the general unassigned fund balance so that we can use those dollars to pay off 2024 retirements, or in essence at this point replenish the fund for payments that have been made in 2024.
Okay. This passed at Finance and Personnel.
All right, move to approve is presented with moving the $126,000.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the transfer of funds of $126,000 from restricted to unassigned fund balance. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 10H, consider, discuss, act on 2024 fiscal year budget interfund transfers. Greg.
Currently in the middle of audit. They're actually here this week. So wrapping up the 2024 financials. And part of that process, like I just had mentioned, at the end of the year in our general fund, sometimes we have excess funds available, and we will, the board will assign those to some other source. Retirements is one. Village Building Fund is another one that helps help us cover some future capital projects within the village. This year, there's two transfers that I would like to propose and get approved. One is actually transferring $55,569 out of an existing fund, Fund 465. That fund is labeled Land Sales and Acquisition Fund. It was established in 2013 with excess general fund dollars at that time. We were able to buy some properties, and I believe in 2014, and we used some of the funds in 2017. This balance has remained in that fund since 2017, untouched, and it, again, is money that, at the board's direction, can be used for other purposes as needs would allow. In this case, this transfer, what we want to do is move that over to the NFL Draft Fund to help cover some of those expenditures that we've already started seeing in 2024 and certainly this year, and that'll ramp up in the next 2 months, obviously. So that would be one ask, is to transfer those funds out of that Land Acquisition Fund and into the NFL Draft Fund. The other transfer request is to take any general fund excess funds and move it into the NFL Draft Fund as well. At this point, final numbers are not completed through the audit, but a pretty solid estimate of around $45,000, $50,000 we should end the year in the general fund. And the request would be to move those into the NFL Draft Fund as well to help cover. Right now, we have no funding source. We're not aware of any other funding source available. So we have these funds between these two transfers, and we do actually have a budgeted, a 2025 budgeted transfer of about $190,000 to cover any unknown at this point NFL Draft costs. We know we'll have people costs. We're going to have probably a lot of overtime with people working, certainly during the week of the draft. Public safety, public works type employees out there doing traffic control, doing maintenance, doing cleanup, all these things that will probably present themselves. So these would be two areas that would help us fund those cash needs for the NFL Draft.
Greg, we do not have any cost whatsoever what that draft is going to cost us then? And where would that money come from for the unknown?
So, yeah, Gary, just to kind of reiterate what Greg had mentioned, so we had a fixed dollar amount that we had budgeted. I believe it was $190,000 in the 2025 budget, specifically for the NFL draft. This is going to transfer some additional dollars to support that $190,000 essentially. We anticipate our law enforcement overtime expenses to be probably pretty close to that dollar amount based on kind of the work demands that are going to be required for the draft. We do anticipate there'll be public work expenses as well. We're still trying to pinpoint what that will be. Our primary concern is, at first, we thought we were going to be doing a lot of traffic control ourselves. It's our understanding that that's going to be handled by State Patrol. Now our public works staff are more focused on garbage, litter cleanup, street, kind of service-related issues as it comes to the draft. So we're, again, trying to pinpoint what those will be. We do anticipate there'll be some expenses. And then the last thing I'll mention is that there was a little bit of buzz, I think, last week regarding the governor's budget proposal, in which they indicated that $1 million was set aside for the NFL draft. Couple of things of caution there. Number one, that's the governor's budget proposal. The legislature still needs to craft their own budget to adopt. So there are certainly as good of chances of that number not being realized in the legislature's budget than being realized. And then coupled with that, if it were to be brought forward and considered for adoption by the state, the governor, in their wisdom, indicated that it was just for the city of Green Bay and did not include the village of Ashwaubenon or Brown County in it. And so we've been working, Mary and myself have been kind of on the phone quite a bit the last couple of days, working with local legislators and even the governor's office on that issue. So we want to ensure that we have adequate funding to support it. Anything that is remaining at the end of the year for the draft fund would get replenished back into an appropriate fund that the board deems appropriate, whether it be the general fund or another restricted fund.
So it sounds to me, Joel, as this is an insurance policy that if funding doesn't come through, we have something there in the background. Am I correct?
Correct.
Joel, does the NFL throw in any money for this, or is this all on us?
We'll probably produce an invoice. I'll wait to see if they pay it, but there will likely be an invoice.
Is that like the politicians' invoice for control when they come to town?
Yeah, there have been a few political candidates that have not paid us in recent years.
So I will make a recommendation for the approval of the transfer of the 55,000 from Fund 465 to Fund 470, and approve the transfer of all 2024 excess general fund dollars to Fund 470.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to transfer the $55,569.03 from 465 to 470, and the final excess general fund from 100 to 470. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 10I, consider, discuss, act on Resolution R 2-1-25, amending the 2024 fiscal year budget.
So as I mentioned earlier, this is related to the agenda item two agendas earlier. We want to amend the 2024 budget to account for $126,000 worth of retirements. So what this would do is we approve the 2024 budget back at the end of 2023, and specifically in here, this resolution is going to increase one expenditure line that's listed, which is a wage reserve / retirement account. It will also increase a revenue stream that's called the fund balance applied. So we would be pulling money out of that reserve and putting it as fund balance applied. So what this would do at the end of the day, when we run our financials and anybody looks at this, it'll look as though This was, it's amendment, so that's a planned expenditure, and it isn't a unplanned draw of reserved funds, more or less. That's what all rating agencies don't like to see. They don't like you going in your reserves without it being budgeted. So this ultimately protects us against having a negative fund balance at the end of the year. So again, this would be a budget amendment to increase the expenditure line for retirement payouts, but then also increasing a revenue source to offset so that at the end of the day, our net change to fund balance is zero.
I'd make an motion to approve resolution R21525, amending the 2024 budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution R 2-1-25. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. 10J, consider, discuss, act on a request to allocate remaining debt proceeds from TIF 5 for road and traffic improvements. Brian Rickert.
All right, so in front of you tonight, you may recall back in the spring of 2023, we solicited or advertised for the reconstruction of Morris Ave. When we bid out that project, bids did come in very competitively. Under budget, there still does remain some unused funds that we do have the ability to use for road reconstruction projects only. What we're looking to do is reallocate those funds to the final traffic signal controller replacements on Holmgren. So you guys may recall there's 3 that were planned in 2025. Essentially, it's adding the remaining 3, so 6 in total to be done in 2025. Essentially, just using those excess unused debt proceeds to support those projects.
What are the 6 we're doing again, Brian? What intersections?
Yeah, so the 6 we're doing are essentially Holmgren and Armed Forces all the way down to, it would be Holmgren and Glimrock. So I can give you all 6 intersections if you want. So it'll include the mall entrance, it'll include Willard, it'll include Mike McCarthy, and Morris.
And it'll basically updating the controllers and the signals is what it's doing. Is that correct?
It's mainly just the cabinet itself. So the cabinet and the controller. So the cabinet and controllers for all those intersections are anywhere from about 27 to 34 years old. And they run off from a computer. So essentially, we're on borrowed time. The software is no longer supported. So right now, if there is any sort of failures, thankfully we kind of have 3 in a scrapyard that we've been using to keep our traffic signals up and operational. Along with Green Bay does also have some in their scrapyard who we have an intergovernmental agreement with to help us with our traffic signals. So essentially, there would be no changes to traffic signal heads, pole locations, push buttons, anything like that. It's strictly just the cabinet itself.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
That works.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the unused debt proceeds from Morris Avenue reconstruction to the remaining traffic signal cabinets on Holmgren in 2025. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. K, consider, discuss, act on execution of the quitclaim deed for the transfer of land on Lombardi Access Road.
All right, so you guys might be aware, last year we did a road reconstruction project on Lombardi Access Road. That segment of land was actually owned by Wisconsin Department of Transportation. During the process of getting permits with that project, we deemed it would be most advantageous to the village to get that land transferred over to the village, so the village does have control over it. Historically, the village always has been maintaining that road. Now we just made a huge investment, about $670,000 on essentially land that is the DOT's and they have control of. So what this does is for the fee of $1, it takes that land and makes it essentially village land to be used for transportation use. So with that, it's more of just kind of cleanup. Ideally, with the way that things shook out, things took quite long with the DOT. Would have liked to have had this done before the project occurred, but the wheels were moving a little slower than expected. The appraisal took a lot longer than expected because it is some of the most valuable land in Brown County and for the state of Wisconsin. So
it's basically the whole road that we're getting.
Yeah, so it's the whole road. I'm not set up to share my screen, but one of the things in your packet actually does have the road. Essentially what it does is it leaves, think of it, there's kind of a ditch in between the access road and actually Lombardi. It kind of just go right down the center of that ditch, and everything north of that is left to the state. Everything south of that will become the villages.
I'll make a motion to execute the quitclaim deed for Lombardi Access Road.
Second?
Motion and a second to do the quitclaim deed for the transfer of land on Lombardi Access Road. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, 10M, consider, discuss, act on ordinance 02-2-25, amending Chapter 7, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 4, Parking, Section 102, Special Event Parking. Okay,
I'll start with it, and then I think Brian and Chief Rolling are gonna kind of take team and add on to this conversation. So a couple quick things. There is an ordinance in your packet. For tonight's discussion, we're really focused on the ordinance. Now, I recognize we did attach a parking restriction map, and the purpose of that is just to provide reference to the ordinance, and then also, you know, certainly discuss some other conditions or parameters on it. So as part of the ordinance, we have special event parking restrictions for certain roads within the village, particularly for Packer game days. However, the village over the series of several years have gone back and forth about how they classify or define what that is. And with the advent of additional events and activities at Lambeau Field, in particular, let's think of a Badger hockey game or a Badger football LSU game, European soccer match, large-scale concerts and events of that nature, our current parking restriction for Packer game day would not be considered qualified for that restriction. So what we did with the ordinance is we're proposing anyway with the ordinance is to change Packer game day to Lambeau Field Stadium Bowl event. It sounds like a lot, but what we're attempting to do is identify that any event or activity, whether it be a sporting event like a game, a practice, a scrimmage, family night, a match, soccer, whatever, it doesn't have to be football even, it could be hockey or soccer, it would qualify. A concert event would certainly qualify for that end. Anything that happens inside the bowl essentially is deemed a special event and would be considered no parking on those days. And so the draft ordinance includes the definition of what that contains. You know, there's some degree of openness to that, you know, we could deem something to qualify as a special event, of course, that fills the stadium bowl. But by and large, that should accommodate that. What the map does is it identifies specific inventoried streets in which this particular ordinance applies to, both under its current code for Packer game days and what would eventually be Lambeau Field Stadium Bowl events. So I think Brian is maybe going to share the map briefly. So on this particular map, it shows areas that we're identifying for the draft. It also identifies areas that are existing as no parking at all times. So those sections of street are identified specifically by code. Oh, you're giving away the store there, Brian. All right. Those particular streets are identified specifically within code. So that's not part of the special event parking. So when you look at the map and you see existing no parking at all times, that's a permanent no parking condition. And those streets are itemized within our code. That's not part of this section that we're reviewing tonight. Then we have areas that are no parking Packer games. Those particular streets would then be no parking Lambeau Field Stadium Bowl event. Okay. Couple quick notes, and Brian can certainly walk through the specific areas. There are streets that are currently identified in our inventory on map form that are no parking on Packer game days. However, upon field review, we identified that someone may have pulled the signs. And so they have become parking at free-for-all. And so what we would propose is that we would continue to use the, as identified on the map, and re-sign those areas appropriately. Couple other quick notes to make. So the dashed red lines, the dashed yellow lines, again, would be parking, no parking conditions for just the draft. Those would be signed by a temporary police order. So we would have to go out prior to the draft, post signage, temporary signage, after the draft, pull signage. That would be consistent with other events that may happen in the community that wouldn't necessarily be deemed a Lambeau Field event. So think of the concerts at Titletown. They decided to bring back Flo Rida, and it's bigger than ever. We would have to post based on need by temporary police order, no parking restrictions, because that would not qualify or be defined as a Lambeau Field Stadium event. And the reason for that is they have concerts that routinely happen throughout the summer that just don't draw a crowd. Or there's the farmer's market or something else that happens in Titletown that wouldn't necessarily equate to the need to create a broadened parking restriction. So in the event that we have those larger planned events, then we'll just have to address it manually through those temporary orders. Again, the red and yellow areas are not inclusive to what we would consider permanent parking restrictions. They would just be for the draft. And just a quick note on those. So like Shady Lane, Morris, Argonne, Marley, Ori, those are anticipated to be major thoroughfares, if you will, for parking, for ingress and egress of the draft. Roads like Blue Ridge, which already has a temporary or a kind of a condition, a permanent condition there, but Blue Ridge, Valley View, April, and Canterbury, those are being proposed to have one side by police order parking restrictions for the draft. And the reason for that is we recognize that there's going to be a substantial amount of pedestrians in that area throughout the day, and none of those neighborhood streets have accommodations for that. So we would expect to see them walking in the street. So by restricting parking on at least one side, we're creating, if you will, a lane within the street for that pedestrian movement. So with that, I was just going to introduce it, but I kind of covered it. So if there's any questions or if you want to know what streets are not signed appropriately, Brian and Chief can kind of cover those.
The only thing I'll add is we did deem as though there's quite a few, I shouldn't say quite a few, but there is a few roads that some of the no parking, all-time no parking, not just Packer game day, so all-time no parking signs have been removed. So we will be working over the course of the next few weeks here to get those signs back up. There's also some no parking day of Packer game day signs that were removed. Plan on getting those up again. Don't know exactly when they were removed. We assume sometime we did an inventory back in 2018 last. So just kind of doing some cleanup, and then much like Joel said, a lot of the roads that you're seeing that have restricted parking during the draft is just to ensure pedestrian safety, because there is going to be heavy traffic flow essentially south of Lombardi, because Lombardi is going to be most likely closed. So everybody's going to be trying to get to that gated entry 1 or 2 or general entry 1 and 2, which the interface of the pedestrians and vehicles is going to be very heavy in these areas.
Yeah. The one thing I went and asked Joel and Brian is that the roads that are right now, no parking for Packer game day, those have not changed. They're still the same. We're not adding any, that would be a further discussion, within the neighborhood. So, but for the draft, we do have to restrict some parking just because there's just gonna be so many people. And they're residential roads, they're skinny roads, and so, anyway.
Joel, can I ask a quick question here? Up in the area of Stadium Drive, Myrtle, June Lane, Wooddale, I get calls from Packer parking problems through Packer events. Now you're calling it events, which is great. Can you just give a short blurb on that at your March 6th meeting at the PAC?
Yeah, I was, based on the conversation tonight, I would provide this map, if you will, along with the change in ordinance, so they recognize that the draft is included in those no parking restrictions.
Okay, because that'll give me an answer to any calls I can get. You weren't at the meeting.
Okay, my question is, I'm assuming the signs that say no parking Packer Day are gonna come down and you're gonna have to get some new ones and put new ones up. You're not gonna be able to kind of refurbish the ones you have.
Correct, yeah, those will have to come down. There's approximately 134 of them that will need to come down and be replaced with no parking day of Stadium Bowl event.
Okay, so my suggestion is that we put something out that those are for sale. People would love to have a sign, I think, that says
Did that
no
last
parking
time.
Packer Day game. And you might even be able to pay for all of your new signs with that. I truly believe you will be able to sell them all.
We did sell them the last time. Did you? Yeah, I have one in my basement because I bought it from Skeeter. Yeah.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
will
it's,
definitely put them on auction.
Yeah.
Do that.
yeah, I mean, put them out on the social media. I would imagine you'll sell them all because people would love to have those. And probably some that are missing, maybe people stole them even, I don't know.
Right, yeah, no, I'll definitely, I know, the city of De Pere, they sell a lot of their old street signs just through social media and stuff like that, so I'll see if they have any special way that they go about doing it, or if they just post it out there and you come pick up a sign and you pay whatever the dollar amount is and carry on your way.
Yeah.
So we're still, just to add a quick couple of notes, we're still working through how we lay out that sign. So one of the conversations we had was placing a code reference on the sign so people knew where to go in the event they question what is a Lambeau Field Stadium event. So we're still working through that aspect. There is a warning sticker on all our existing signs for theft or removal with a fine or forfeiture. We would probably maintain that sticker, but if you recall, we had some conversation previously about adding some type of sticker that would identify what the fee would be or the fine would be for illegal parking. So we're still working through what that would look like as well, being that the board recently updated that fee schedule or that fine schedule for illegal parking.
Okay. Anybody want to entertain a motion?
I'd make a motion to go ahead with replace the signage for the Packer Game Day parking as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept ordinance 02-2-25, amending Chapter 7, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 4, Parking, Section 102, Special Event Parking. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. Number 11, items for next agenda. I don't know if we can identify this, but I think Tracy and I talked it, we should maybe think about some projects that we have that are federal grants, just so it's on our radar, just a little blurb at the next village board meeting.
Okay, can do.
And anything else, call the office. Number 12, closed session items. During the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to item A and B in closed session language. I need a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go in closed session?
Second.
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call, please.
President Kardowski,
Here, yes.
Trustee Atkinson,
Yes.
Trustee Service,
Yes.
and Trustee Flukie.
Yes.